Hello, I am Daniel Bloodworth. We are Easy Allies, and this is the Easy Allies podcast. Friends, this week we are joined by Jason Schreier. Hey, Jason.
Hello! Thank you guys so much for having me on here.
Jason just wrote a book. It's about to come out. We're going to get into all of that. We also have Michael Huber up here on the desk.
Let's go Dodgers!
Obsessed.
Yeah, playoff time.
Man is tweeting about Dodgers stuff from a preview event.
When you're a baseball fan and a horror fan, October is the culmination of the entire human experience. Just gonna say it.
We also have Michael Damiani.
I was gonna say, Huber, we talk about like baseball all day because
Yankees Dodgers, dude.
Because I know you love the Dodgers. I got the Yankees, and how do you feel about this, real quick? Yankees and Phillies are more favored to reach and win the World Series than the Dodgers right now.
I know Dodgers we're in bad shape right now. We're battered. We're injured. We are not favored right now. We're fighting. Yeah, we're fighting.
All right, I might have a few more baseball questions later, but I'll keep us on a roll here.
Okay. Making it all happen in the control room, we got Isla Hink.
Hi.
With Don and Gabby watching over us.
Nice.
Friends, we're here to talk about what's new, what's news, what we've been playing. This week, we've got Jason, of course, so we're going to be talking about this book right here, Play Nice, about the history of Blizzard. We've got a couple announcements just today. New studio from lead devs behind Mario plus Rabbids and Red Dead Redemption. So that'll be
crossover.
Fun. Yeah. There's a new Avatar: The Last Airbender game in the works. So we'll get Damiani's take on that. Plus we played Zelda. We played that Mortal Kombat expansion. And Don has played Iron Meat.
Iron Meat. Talking meat, boy.
Before we get into the book, Jason, let's get to know you a little bit. I'm sure a lot of people have heard your name, what's your backstory and everything that you've got going on and how you got into all this mess?
Origins.
Sum up your life in 3 minutes or less. My book, it's actually, I don't know if you know this, Huber, it's actually about the rise, fall, and future of Shohei Ohtani. And it dives deep into the story. I don't know. How do I sum myself up? Well, I was born, and then I did a couple things, and one day I'll die. And I have 2 kids.
Bold.
I can talk to you guys about my children. I can tell some stories about my 5-year-old and my 2-year-old.
Nice.
No, I don't know. I'm a journalist. For those of you who don't know me, I work for a former mayor's website called Bloomberg.com, and I also write books. And I got a new book coming out this Tuesday, October 8th, called Play Nice: The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. And I don't know if you guys know this, but like, in the book publishing world, you actually basically finish the book like months and months, in my case 7 or 8 months before you actually publish it. So you just have to wait and wait and wait for people to actually get their hands on what you've written. And it's so unlike the world we're all used to, where we write things or record things or shoot videos and then just put them right online. It takes like a week max, or like a couple weeks if we have to wait for an embargo or something. But in the book world, you're waiting for months. And so needless to say, I've been like, for literally since February, every single day I've been Googling how many days until October 8th. And now it's like finally here. So that's very exciting for me.
Yeah. I mean, and we're not quite into the book yet, but that was one of the things I was wondering going through it, is like, there are just more headlines coming. And you were like, you've already got your beginning and end and everything. Yeah,
it's true. Although I will say most of the headlines recently have been because of my book tour and like the AMA I did on Reddit on Sunday, and then like all the podcasts I've been doing. So a lot of the stories that people have been seeing out there are just coming from me and from this book. That said, I mean, one of the kind of dangers of writing a book that is about current events in some way is that you never know what's going to happen between when you actually finish the thing and when real life catches up, when it actually gets published. And I actually got super lucky, and this is a little bit morbid. It's not luck in some ways, but I'll tell the story. And that is that basically I wrote my first draft of this book in like I finished it in like late December / early January of this year. So at the beginning of January, filed it to my editor. She was reading it, and I was just waiting. Sent it out to a couple of early readers as well. And then at the end of January, Microsoft decides to lay off 1,900 people, including hundreds at Blizzard. And so I frantically email my editor and say, hey, I need to write a new last chapter for this thing, because my original ending of the book was a lot more optimistic. And then Microsoft just kind of completely eviscerated. And so I got fortunate in that sense. I probably, like, if my original ending would not have been tonally right, I was probably going to tweak it a little bit anyway, but still. And then actually the layoffs were really sad, and there's some tragic stories that I included in the book, including like a couple people who were like moved to Irvine only to get laid off 3 months later, or like, in one case, one guy was like rooting so hard for the Microsoft acquisition to go through because he was working on this like incubation project, and he was told it would only be greenlit if Microsoft was able to take over. And then so he's rooting for the whole regulation process. He's like rooting for Microsoft. He's like, yeah, they're winning. And then Microsoft lays him off as soon as they take control. So yeah, it was bleak, but I also found this like really perfect full circle narrative ending point for this story. So I'm really happy with the way that it was able to end. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is actually the perfect ending, even if some crazy stuff happens between February, March, like around the time I finished the final draft, and today.
Sick.
And then what's your life like at Bloomberg? Like, what is the day-to-day on that? It feels kind of like you have free reign, but you've got to have some kind of bosses over there, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I definitely have bosses. It's not, I have some free reign, a good amount of free reign, I would say. But because it's Bloomberg and we're a finance website, a business website, I do have to cover earnings calls. And so I have to, and like earnings press releases and stuff like that. So that is always a funny one, because
we love earnings calls.
Yeah, right. Well, but Bloomberg covers them different. Like when you're at a finance site, you cover them differently. Like, so when I was on the gaming enthusiast end, when I was at Kotaku, and before that at Wired, we would be listening to earnings calls to get the news nuggets out. Like, oh, Ubisoft announces a delay. Oh, like EA is hinting at a new Star Wars game or whatever. And those are good, juicy news nuggets. But now at Bloomberg, you have to kind of learn what analysts' like quarterly expectations are, like what what analysts' quarterly estimates are, and how they stack up to what the companies are reporting. And you have to kind of cover it from for readers who are carefully tracking the stock market and want to know if they should buy or sell EA stock, which is an interesting challenge. But fortunately, that stuff is only once a quarter, so the rest of the time I can kind of do what I want outside of a couple of assignments here and there.
Got to watch out for those economic headwinds.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you've mentioned Kotaku, which I think is where a lot of people know you're writing from, and then Wired before that. Where were you earlier?
So I always knew I wanted to be a writer, like since I was 5 years old. And then in high school, kind of discovered journalism, fell in love with it on my high school paper, like walking around the hallways, seeing people holding like the newspaper and being like, oh my God, they could be reading my article. It was the coolest thing in the world. And then, after I graduated from college, I wound up doing like freelance journalism and reporting. And, here's my origin story. I've told this a bunch of times, but I think it's a fun one. I knew I wanted to be a writer and reporter. I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew I wanted to do that. And I was doing local journalism, and I wound up covering this kind of like zoning board meeting in a town near where I grew up. And I remember it vividly. I'm sitting in this room. It's like a town hall style room with like rows of chairs, and I'm sitting in one of the rows, and I'm watching these old dudes sitting on a podium on the stage in the front, and they're arguing over whether a fence is allowed to be 25 feet or 30 feet. And I'm sitting there typing notes, and I'm just like, I am going to kill myself if I have to do this anymore. What could I write about that would be more interesting than this? And then I was like, hey, I like video games. Why don't I try my hand at that? And then kind of accidentally fell into this, never thinking I would stay like in video games as a beat. Like I always assumed I would do this for a couple of years, maybe move on to something else, like just keep writing in different forms, maybe do journalism, maybe do some like fiction writing, some screenwriting. like other types of writing, and then just kind of like accidentally stumbled into this career that I just kept doing, because once you start doing it and you're fortunate enough, and I was very fortunate to get first to work with Chris Kohler at Wired, and then to go and work with Stephen Totilo and my team at Kotaku, to get a job where I was given so much like autonomy and agency and freedom to kind of pursue stories in a way that I wanted to pursue without having to worry about corporate interests or like pressures from game companies that we cover, which is like something I've never had to worry about. So very, very fortunate, and then kind of like stuck with it almost accidentally. And now 15 years later, here I am.
Nice. So you've been around and like you said, a lot of different kinds of outlets. What do you think, like in 2024, like why is it that still like traditional news outlets don't have like a lot of like games writers? Like you have the movie TV guy, you have the sports guy, but like unless you get a story like Black Myth Wukong, selling so many copies, I'm not hearing about games that often on NPR or something, or on just like the local TV news.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I just recorded a segment with NPR a couple hours ago, so you will hear it soon on Here and Now. You can check me out next week on Here and Now. It's interesting. At Bloomberg, obviously, we have 2 video game reporters, which I think is great, and it's great that Bloomberg has supported coverage of this industry that they recognize as humongous. Washington Post has one. They used to have a vertical, but they shut it down, which is unfortunate. The New York Times, they have like in their arts section, they have this guy who has been greenlighting a lot of freelance video game coverage, which is great, although they don't have a full-time games reporter. And then they have a couple of people on their business desk who like cover games as a side beat. And so, yeah, they don't have a full-time games reporter, which is too bad and doesn't really make much sense to me, but it is what it is. I'm not sure. It's interesting because like, doing a book, publishing a book, you run into some of the same kind of problems where you have some of these barriers in the traditional literary world where some of the people like might not know anything about games. And I'm very excited and very interested to see what happens next week when the book launches, to see like who covers it in the book publishing world, like who pays attention to it, who reviews it, and so on and so forth. Because I know that obviously gaming sites are interested in Blizzard and interested in this story, but I'm very curious to see if it can like penetrate that. Even, okay, I'll tell you guys a funny story that I haven't told anyone else yet, so this week I got super depressed. Let me give you guys a little bit of backstory here. So this is my 3rd book. My last 2 books, Blood, Sword, and Pixels and Press Reset, came out over the last few years. And something that has always been super bleak to me, something that has always bummed me out so much, is that when I go to Barnes & Noble, those books are buried in like the video game gulag with like the Minecraft strategy guides. Right. And it's so sad because it's like nobody is ever going to discover it there. Nobody is going to get Final Fantasy art books and think, oh, I want this like book about the history, like the video game industry. Like that is not what happens. So just nobody buys them, right? And that's so sad. It just bums me out so much. So one of the first things I did with this book years ago was I sent this like long and emotional email to my agent being like, look, like if there's one thing I want above all else for this book is to get it in the business section of Barnes & Noble instead of the video game section. And so cut to last week, and I got a tweet from someone who was like, hey, we got your book in, and it was a photo of the book on stands at Barnes & Noble, and of course, next to it, I see the fucking Final Fantasy art book, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So I contacted my agent, and I think he might be making some magic happen, because he's like raising a stink with people at Barnes & Noble and trying to get it so they'll put it in the proper section. But yeah, if you're out there and you work at a Barnes & Noble, please take all copies of Play Nice and move them to the business section where they belong, because nobody who's going to get Minecraft strategy guides wants to buy a book about Blizzard's history. So yeah, that's just an example.
That, like being in both is just unthinkable, right?
Right. And it's just, yeah, it's like, it speaks to what you were talking about. And I think really the larger problem, which is that like, unless you were born in a certain year or afterwards, you just don't get it. You don't get the games industry. And I think that like the answer to this is just that like once boomer / old Gen X is kind of like replaced by more millennials, more people who grew up playing video games, and even if they don't still play video games today, at least they get it, and they probably casually play games. Like I talk to people all the time. My next door neighbor, actually, when I met him, I was talking to him about what I do and told him about my career, yada yada yada. And he was like, "Oh, I don't play video games." I was like, "Oh, okay, interesting." And then he happened to mention later that he had a Switch and had played 100 hours of Breath of the Wild. I was like, "You're saying you don't play video games? You played 100 hours of this game? Like what?" So that's like, as people like that who are like in their 30s and 40s rather than in their 50s and 60s, and actually grew up around like games as a cultural like necessity, as they get in charge of some of these mainstream publications or Barnes and Noble or whatever else, I think that's when we'll really see a sea change. I think it's happening, but I think it'll happen more.
Yeah. And one more intro thing before we get to the book itself. What kinds of things do you like to play?
I play everything. I mean, my personal favorite genres are probably like JRPGs, and then like thinking games, I guess you might call them, adventure / Metroidvanias. So like Case of the Golden Idol or like Return of the Obra Dinn, stuff like that are totally up my alley. But I play everything. I mean, I try to dabble with as much as possible.
What about Warframe?
I'm not a Warframe person. I was a Destiny person for a long time, and that was kind of my big sci-fi shooter game. And I stopped playing that after a few years for a variety of reasons, but mostly because I had a child, and like playing a service game is not really compatible with having a child, especially if you want to play other games too.
Nice. So let's get into the book. Play Nice, The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. I've read through the whole thing. These guys haven't got a chance to get to it yet.
I lived it.
You lived it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
yeah,
that's actually,
I didn't know you worked at Blizzard. You worked at Blizzard for 33 years?
Just as a fan.
Well, hold on. Yeah. But if just as a fan, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there you don't know about. I'll tell you that now. A lot of previously unreported details about the history of Blizzard.
Blizzard sketch is shit, so I'm a little nervous.
I'll tell you, man. It's, well, I mean, some of it's good, some of it's bad. I when I set out to do a book like this, this is a good segue into like something that I find interesting and worth talking about, is like, to me, there was no point in doing a book like this if it was just going to be about stuff that's publicly available already. So what I did was I went and interviewed, the book is based on interviews with about 350 people. 300 of them are former Blizzard people or current Blizzard people. And it's all their stories. Like, you flip through the book, you will see a ton of quotes and people attributed, like stories and anecdotes and thoughts attributed to people. And so like some of it will be events that you know, but kind of recontextualized with people's perspectives. So for example, a lot of people think they know the Diablo 3 story, but you don't know Jay Wilson's perspective, and it's in the book. He was the director of Diablo 3, and he talks about the real devastating experiences he had with the internet suddenly hating him because of this game and what that did to him mentally. Like, he gets really open and candid about that stuff. Or you might think you know about, I don't know, the Blitzchung like story, like what happened with Blizzard and getting into all sorts of hot water because they banned this guy for speaking out about Hong Kong. But you probably haven't heard Blitzchung's perspective, and that's in here too. And then you also probably haven't heard the Blizzard executives' perspectives who were actually like in the room making those decisions. That's in here too. And then you definitely haven't heard some of the stories that are in here. The story about when Blizzard got banned from a hotel in the in the late 1990s that has never been made public. A lot of other stuff, a lot of other wild anecdotes in there that have never been made public. Because to me, there's no point there's no point in doing a book if it's just going to chronicle information, if it's just going to collate information that's already out there. Like, why would I sell that to you for $30? No, for $30 you're getting a story that you've never seen before, with details you've never heard before, and hopefully is investing and gripping and like keeps you reading. A lot of people have described it as a page turner, which I really enjoy. My favorite bit of feedback.
That's what Blood said. That's what Blood was like, dude.
I absolutely had those moments where it's like, because it's like I'm trying to get this in between like other work and stuff, and so it's like, okay, well, maybe one chapter, maybe two more chapters before I could get onto the next set of emails or whatever.
This is my favorite reaction. My favorite reaction is someone emails me and is like, "Oh my god, I started your book last night, like intending to just read the first chapter, and I accidentally read 200 pages." I'm like, "Yes, this is perfect. This is what I'm going for."
Sick. So
sick. And so like Huber has the perspective of, he's the mega Blizzard fan. It's like been into all of those franchises, and I am like, I'm this satellite. Like, I hear about Blizzard on the wind, but like I played almost none of these games and know about very little about this. Like, I sat in a GDC talk like a few years back with like David Brevik talking about Diablo, but that was really like the deepest I've ever gone, and it's really it just being in this space and hearing about reports and things. And and I think one of like the first things that like I don't know why I was surprised by it, but I was surprised by the fact it was like, oh, this is not just a book about a bunch of controversies. Like this is actually going back into the space of like when these guys started and what it was like and what like every individual was going through, and so it was really appreciated like all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope that people who don't care about Blizzard will enjoy it. And I think they will, because I think one of the reasons I wanted to tell this story specifically is because so much of it is broadly applicable to the video game industry at large and really all industries. Like, I think a lot of the themes in this book can be kind of extrapolated and applied to a lot of workplaces. A lot of people who work in any sort of office environment will find common themes here of like creativity versus predictability and the pursuit of never-ending growth, and even just creative collaboration and the struggles that can bring, like trying to work together with people and how difficult that is. And I think people really enjoy it. I'm glad you did too, Blood.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that to me that I think stands out is that like every one of these stories, it's like, yes, you have the Diablo story and the Overwatch story and the World of Warcraft story, but every time that you like segue into one of those things, it's like you found like the person. You found like a key person to like go back, find out how did they get to Blizzard, when were they like sitting in a parking lot waiting for an application to be approved, or like one guy would like he like was driving his friend in to apply, and then they got him to like sign up too.
Yeah, so many good stories.
Like,
Ben Brode might be one of my favorites. Ben Brode was the face of Hearthstone for a long time and one of the kind of co-creators of it, essentially. And his story is that he was going to school at UC Irvine and learned while going there that Blizzard worked on their campus, and he was like, what? Warcraft 3 is my favorite game of all time, and the company that made it is on my campus. So what he did was he had a job delivering pizzas at the time, and so he had a buddy who was starting to work at QA at Blizzard, and he got his buddy to start ordering pizzas late at night, and he would arrange to be the one to deliver them. So whenever he came and delivered, he would schmooze with everyone there, and then when a position opened up, he applied and he knew everyone, so he got the job like by delivering pizzas to them.
That's hilarious.
Everyone has, there are a lot of great origin stories there. One of my favorites also is that in the early days before Blizzard was like Blizzard, and they weren't attracting applications from everywhere in the world, they would just hire like people who knew friends of friends, and so they wound up hiring 4 different people, all from the same Kinko's in Orange County,
right?
Who just like one after another recommended each other.
And you mentioned before, like you essentially wrap it up in that same way. Like the ending of this book is, it's about a person as well, and how that all comes full circle. Not to fully spoil it, but yeah.
That's what I was talking about before.
That really struck me as like, oh, wow. Because I wasn't sure, like, how is this going to find a stopping point? And it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Sense.
But that's what I was getting at before. And it's kind of like, as bleak and horrible as that particular event was, for me, it was kind of a moment to like be like, wow, this is the end of a particular story here.
Yeah. So I have a whole lineup of questions, but you guys can definitely like jump in if there's anything that like interesting to you.
I would love to ask Jason, do you think the reason Blizzard has not made Warcraft 4 or StarCraft 3 is because RTSs are not the hotness in the industry, or there's just no one at Blizzard that is passionate about continuing those types of games? What are your thoughts?
A mix of both. So I cover this in the book. So
I want to get into that.
So there's a guy named Tim Morton, who's a production director at StarCraft 2. And he joined a little bit later in StarCraft's life, like around Legacy of the Void, and then he kind of took over the team and led them through Nova Covert Ops, if you remember that. That was the kind of the expansion pack that was like a little StarCraft ghosty. And then he took the game free to play. And the whole time after Legacy and after Nova, he was going around trying to pitch a new RTS game at Blizzard. And he spent years doing it. And he his team pitched and prototyped and did all sorts of things. And they kept getting resistance. And there was resistance for a few reasons. One is that at this point in Blizzard's history, they were kind of facing a lot of pressures from above, which the book dives heavily into. And they had to focus on other projects. But it's not just that. It's not just that. There was also a lack of appetite on the Blizzard executive level for RTS games. There was a lot of belief, including from Alan Adham, who's a co-founder of the company and basically the director of all of those RTS games that you and I grew up loving. He no longer believed that RTS was the big, he believed that Clash of Clans had usurped RTS games and stuff like that. So there was a lack of appetite for that. I think there was a lot of, this is going to depress you even further, but
oh, geez.
People were holding out hope that if Warcraft 3 Reforged did well, it would start momentum for a new RTS game. And of course, we all know what happened there.
Yes.
It did not do well. It was a blemish on Blizzard's history. And then here's the final thing, and this is kind of a wrinkle that you might not think of. At this point, Morton actually had a hard time finding someone who would be a good fit as director of a new RTS game. Yeah. And this is for a couple of reasons.
It takes somebody to spearhead every game, for sure.
Yeah, and Morton wanted to. He's a production guy, so he wanted to as the EP, executive producer, but there was a lack of so there wasn't a clear fit for that role because there wasn't a designer at Blizzard who wanted to do it and had the experience to do it. A lot of the veteran designers who had worked on StarCraft 2 for years and years wanted to do other things, like Dustin Browder, for example. He was the director of StarCraft 2 for a long time, and then he was off doing a shooter game. He wanted to play around with new genres. There were a few people. I spoke to a guy named Jason Huck, who was a top designer on StarCraft 2 for a long time, and he told me he was kind of sick of RTS games. He did some prototypes too, but at a certain point, it was you're kind of sick of the genre when you've worked on it for so long. And remember, StarCraft 2, so the book gets into the development of the early days of StarCraft 2, which started 04, 05, 06 even, although it took a long break for those people to go work on World of Warcraft instead, because around 2005 the entire company was vacuumed into the World of Warcraft. But StarCraft 2 was in development for a long time, 6 years, I don't know, 5-6 years, and then after that it was still in development for another 5-6 years because they had to make all of the three parts of it, Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Storm, Legacy of the Void. So for people who had been there for a long time, working on RTS games, there's a lot of RTS in there. And there's only so many times. Yeah, man. And there's only so many times you can kind of come up with a new creative mission idea for an RTS game. So anyway, Morton left and took a bunch of folks with him to start a company called Frost Giant, and they just released Stormgate, which has gotten kind of mixed reviews, but is in early access, so has time to kind of get better.
It's got good bones.
I think so too. It's
got good bones.
I like the 1v1 when I played some. It's tough for me to commit to a new RTS after all the hours I've spent learning StarCraft, the hundreds of hours that I spent learning StarCraft 2. But yeah, Stormgate hopefully it gets good.
Do you think we're going to get Warcraft 4 or World of Warcraft 2 first?
I don't think we're going to get either of those games. But I think a successor to World of Warcraft seems much more likely to me than a Warcraft 4. I just don't think there's... So Blizzard, one of the themes of this company is how much World of Warcraft transformed it. And that was in a billion different ways. But one of the biggest ones is that when you have a game that is making hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue per year, it's hard to justify having people work on smaller games that will not make hundreds of millions, even if those games will also be profitable. It's kind of why are you putting these people on this little old thing? This is why Hearthstone was almost canceled canceled like 3 different times because there was always that question, both from Activision and from Blizzard. There was that question of why are we wasting talented veteran staff on this little project when they could be helping us make WoW expansions more quickly? WoW is what keeps this company running. WoW is our moneymaker. WoW is our bread and butter. Why are we wasting our time with this little thing? And that
sounds like Mario Kart 8, Damiani.
oh man. But yeah, that's like this is one of the fundamental tensions that led to Activision stepping in and pushing people out, and all of the kind of epic corporate boardroom drama that I detail in the book. That's a lot of it comes down to that tension of like, well, we have World of Warcraft, why do anything else?
Yeah, and because that was the thing you had pointed out with Hearthstone, with like basically their team got taken away from them for something else, and so it was just like a couple of guys that were like iterating and figuring it out, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. So the story of Hearthstone is a fascinating one. It's like they had this team, they were building momentum, and then suddenly StarCraft 2 needed to be delayed for a few months because BattleNet was running behind, and they needed to launch like BattleNet 2.0 alongside
Right.
StarCraft 2. You must remember this back when it was like the total revamp.
It was like BattleNet's back? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. And it was like account systems and like all the new stuff that came with it. And it was cool. But like, yeah, so they needed to do that. So they delayed StarCraft 2, and they took most of the Hearthstone team, which at the time was, I don't know, 10 people, something like that, took most of them and put them on StarCraft 2. And all that was left was 4 people, I believe. And what they were doing, they were like worried, they were stressing out because they thought that the game was going to be canceled. But then they realized it was the best thing that could have happened to them, because they spent the next 8-9 months just like doing little paper card prototypes of the game and designing cards on paper and playing with their team at lunch and just testing and prototyping and experimenting. And by the end of this, by the time they got their team back, the entire game was designed essentially. And then they just had to spend the next 3 or 4 years like building it, getting it, moving it from paper design to an actual like game, tweaking, like coming up with new card designs, like tweaking stuff. But the rules of the game were intact at that point.
Super cool.
Nice.
Wow.
You go over like a number of those canceled projects that like people are always curious about, right? StarCraft Ghost is in there, Titan is in there, Odyssey is in there, which I don't think I knew about before. Odyssey.
Yeah, it was that was the one that was just canceled earlier this year. The survival game. Yeah.
I'm curious. Was it at all harder to get those stories out of people than something more about like workplace issues, or is it all kind of the same? Like,
no, it wasn't harder. I mean, different people, like, I think in general, so a lot of people I spoke to asked to be anonymous, which I granted and was totally fine with, because it helped them be candid about certain things. I think people were more inclined to use their names and to speak on the record for if, like, based on, it was kind of correlated to the amount of time it had been since they were there, because people are a lot more comfortable speaking, like, candidly and openly and using their names when they haven't been at the company for 20 years and they're not really worried about, like, burning bridges anymore. Or stuff like that. That said, no, it wasn't super hard. I think a lot of some people were a little reluctant to talk about Titan for a couple of reasons. One is just like the forces of personality involved and some kind of like people being scared of repercussions as a result of that. 2, I guess there's always a concern about NDAs and stuff when you're talking about games that never came out. But it wasn't that hard to get people to talk about Titan, even on the record, just because it was so long ago at this point. Odyssey was definitely tougher to get people to talk on the record. I don't think anyone really did, maybe 1 or 2 people, but because that was so recent and canceled so recently. So it mostly depends how recent it is. And then, yeah, I mean, as far as workplace stuff, it depends which topic, and also depends when the time frame was. But yeah, it just totally varied. And some women were actually willing to speak on the record, which I thought was very courageous of people. And I'm glad that they were able to share their stories.
Yeah. And it seems clear that, like, even in the early days, despite having that reputation for taking their time, like, they were always fighting with crunch, right? And always having that that pressure from, oh, we just made one of the best games ever. How do we follow this up? And and I'm curious because like we've heard about the Blizzard magic or the BioWare magic or the insert company here magic, right? Like, do you think that like there was actually a little something to that when you had smaller teams that were just like living at the studio all the time, and then like somehow they gelled together, and that just can't be replicated with hundreds of people spread across continents?
Yeah, I mean, team size is another whole giant theme in this book that is explored quite a bit. Yeah, it's interesting. The crunch thing is another kind of issue where there's nuance involved. First and foremost, I think when we talk about crunch today, that's like crunch today is basically vacation compared to crunch in the 90s for the most part. I mean, some companies I think are still a little brutal, but like crunch in the 90s was a different world. Like the stuff that they got away with at Blizzard in the 90s, I think would be like borderline illegal today. It would not be put up with today. But the flip side of that is that like having conversations with some people about it, some of them are like, man, I loved it and I hated it, or like I thought it was awesome and exhilarating and also like miserable. And a lot of people have conflicting feelings about it, largely because at the time they were in their 20s and there was nothing else to do, right? It's like this was their social lives. All they wanted to do was like go make games with their friends and then play games with their friends during breaks and like after work and stuff like that. But some people did not have that experience. I mean, I spotlight this one guy in the book. Here's another amazing anecdote that I don't believe has ever been made public. So this guy used to work at Blizzard in 1995, around the time of Warcraft 2, and his name was Andy Weir, and he was an engineer there, and he had a miserable time. He was asked to crunch. He asked for this like vacation, and then while he was on vacation, his boss called him and was like chewing him out for going on vacation. He was like bullied in the office. He just had a miserable time there, and he left after less than a year. So like the pressure wasn't for everyone, but don't worry, Andy was okay because he went on to write a book called The Martian that got turned into a movie with Matt Damon.
Andy Weir, I thought that name was familiar.
So don't worry, he's okay.
Like, don't I know that name?
Andy Weir is okay, but he had a miserable time at Blizzard, and I spoke to him about it, and it was interesting hearing his perspective because like not everybody took to that pressure cooker. But some people did, and some people loved it, and some people both loved and hated it, and some people loved it in the moment, and now looking back are like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, that was really bad for me. There's this one guy, Pat Wyatt, who was one of the like earliest employees of Blizzard, and he told me that like he feels like he has holes in his memory from like that period because of all the crunching he did. So yeah, I think people have really kind of conflicting feelings about that stuff. And then some people have, it's like some of their fondest memories is like being in the trenches to finish StarCraft or whatever. To answer your question, I mean, I do think there is a lot to be said about like a team of 10 people all working together, kind of knowing each other well, having chemistry, having shorthand, being able to communicate with each other, being able to align toward a single vision. In many ways, that can be more productive and more efficient than a team of 200 people, where maybe you can technically make more content, but like you have to worry about communication and have producers like managing everybody and logistics and all that stuff.
You had that one line or quote in there like 9 women can't make a baby in a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was an argument with Activision all the time, because like cutting ahead to the future 20 years after the 90s Blizzard is like Activision coming in and essentially saying, hey, you guys are failing not releasing a new World of Warcraft expansion every year, not putting out new products every year the way we do at Activision. What you need to do is look at Call of Duty. We have 1,000 people on Call of Duty. That's how we're able to put it out every year. So you need 1,000 people on World of Warcraft. You need multiple teams working on Overwatch, so you can have multiple, like, so you can support the old game and also release a new game.
Depressing.
And it was just this like fundamental divide about how games should be made, and team size was a huge part of that argument. And Blizzard did add 100 new people to the World of Warcraft team. I think at this point it's like 500-600 people on World of Warcraft. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's pretty big. But for Activision, I mean, they would have been thrilled if Blizzard had just hired a bazillion, like thousands of people on the World of Warcraft team, or better yet, move the entire company to World of Warcraft. Activision was always like, Bobby Kotick would come in and say, and his executives would come in and say, why do you have so many people in cinematics? Why do you have so many people in customer service? Why aren't you cutting those departments and hiring more people in World of Warcraft? That was the Bobby Kotick philosophy.
Right. One thing, one of the stories I was hoping you could kind of share here, especially for the people that haven't read yet, is that the ridiculous way that Blizzard and Blizzard North, Condor, happened to meet.
Extremely good.
Yes.
Another good story. By the way, this entire podcast is just me convincing Huber that this book will be stories he has not heard before. And
I am so hyped to read
this
this.
time.
Never stop learning. Ever.
This is funny. So in 1993-ish or 1993 or 3, I think it was. One of those two. There's this group of folks in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's this guy, David Brevik, and these two brothers, the Schaefer brothers, and maybe one or two more people at this point. And they have started a game company called Condor, and they're doing kind of like these contracts to pay the bills, conversions of games. And at the same time, a company called Silicon and Synapse, soon to be called Blizzard, is doing the same thing down in Irvine. And so Brevik and the Condor people are at this convention in Chicago, and they're showing off their game, which is like a Sega Genesis version of Justice League Task Force, which is the superhero fighting game from that year. And so they're going around and they're actually trying to pitch this new game. They want to make this original game that they're calling Diablo. And so they're taking it to different publishers and pitching it and having no luck. And they're going around. And finally, dejected, they're like getting no's everywhere. They go back to their booth, the Sunsoft booth, where their publisher is and where their game is being shut off. And there they see like that at the same booth, there is a Super Nintendo version of Justice League Task Force. And they're like, wait a minute, we're not working on a Super Nintendo version of this. Like, what the heck? And they go over and they're like, what is this? Like, we didn't know this was in development. And they go up to the guy in charge and he says, hi, my name is Alan Adham. I work for a company called Blizzard down in Irvine. And that is how these guys meet. And Brevik is like, they start talking. They realize they have like similar philosophies about making games, and like they even have done some similar things with each of their ports of Justice League, despite like being totally 500 miles apart. And then Brevik is like, I have this game idea. It's called Diablo. Can I tell you about it? And Alan Adham is like, well, sure, but give me a couple of months because we're working on our own game called Warcraft and we need to finish it and then we can talk. And sure enough, a couple months later, they start talking, and Alan Adham and Pat Wyatt, the other Blizzard exec at the time, they fly out to San Francisco and they look at the game pitch and they get it. And in the room, they're like, yep, we're in. And that leads to Blizzard first signing Condor to make Diablo. And then about a year or two after that, Blizzard winds up buying Condor and turning it into Blizzard North, where it would go on to finish Diablo and then make Diablo 2.
Wild. So wild. Jeez. I didn't know. I thought like Diablo was the only thing or not Diablo, Dota was the only thing they scooped up like that.
Well, Dota, they didn't scoop
Wild.
up. Dota, they missed out on scooping up. That's like that one of Blizzard's.
Valve kind of scooped
Valve
up Dota. In its
yeah,
own
I mean,
way,
this is a
Scooped
whole nother
in,
story.
yeah.
Here's another story
Yeah.
you'll only
Yeah.
read in this book, which is that so Dota got really popular. Dota started with a StarCraft map that I remember well from 1998 called Aeon of Strife, but it really got popular as a Warcraft 3 mod called Dota. And what happened was it was like 2005, and Blizzard actually was noticing this and like considering working on a Dota, or like even considering hiring the guy behind it to make a sequel. So they found this guy, and he goes by the handle Ice Frog. He doesn't really like his real name used, so I won't say it out of respect to him, but he goes by the handle Ice Frog. And so Blizzard flies him out, and they take him out to lunch with all the top guys, Rob Pardo, like all these top execs at Blizzard, and they're a little turned off because he's asking for creative freedom, and he wants autonomy making the project. So they're like, I don't know. And also at this point, World of Warcraft has just exploded, so they're like, we don't really have the resources for something like this anyway. Okay, forget it. It was nice meeting you, Ice Frog. Ice Frog would, of course, go on to then work for Valve and design a game called Dota 2, whereas Blizzard was years late to the party, and then found out a few years later that there was this company called Riot Games making their own version of it called League of Legends. Riot Games would go on to poach probably dozens, if not hundreds, of Blizzard staff in the subsequent years, including on Titan, on the Titan project, which is a kind of a pivotal point in Blizzard's history. Riot winds up poaching nearly the entire animation team all at once. Like suddenly one day the Titan team comes to work and the animation team is gone, and it's like, where are those guys? Oh, they're all at Riot now. They all work for Riot now.
Wow.
And at the same time, Valve is doing Dota 2. Valve and Blizzard actually wind up in litigation over who gets the rights to use Dota. That they wind up settling, and Valve gets it. And Blizzard winds up releasing their own MOBA many years late to the party. And it's so funny because like their approach to making games is always like to take a genre and like make the perfect, most approachable, most accessible version out of it. But there are two problems with this. One is that League of Legends and Dota are already pretty polished and approachable and accessible. Two is that what Blizzard tried to do was kind of sand off a lot of the rough edges for MOBA games and make it so you could, you didn't have to do as much, you didn't have to think as much, you didn't have to worry about like last hitting or like item shops or a lot of the other kind of stuff that is in Dota and League of Legends. And as a result, they made a game that was like too easy for most MOBA players. It lacked excitement. It lacked challenge.
I miss it though. I miss Heroes of the Storm. I love it.
It's a great game. It's still, if you log on today, like it's still, players are still on there. It just never hit the heights of Dota 2 and League because MOBA players in general, I mean, last hitting is a perfect example, right? Like with last hitting, what that is for people who don't know MOBAs is that like whoever kills the mob, like a little NPC monster, whoever kills it last gets the experience. And so you can wind up being a little more overpowered than your teammates, and you can wind up being the hero that saves the day and like carries your team. Whereas in Heroes, it was all shared experience, so everybody kind of hit the same level. And so what Blizzard was trying to do was like make it more fun overall for everybody by making everyone have like an equal playing field in the game, and you could kind of do well even if you weren't super skilled. But what Blizzard, I think, didn't realize is that a lot of MOBA players wanted that moment of like being the hero, being the guy or the girl who saves the entire team and like is able to do the last hitting, get the most levels, and like save the day for everybody. So I think Blizzard really, even people who are on that team, I think would admit they really dropped the ball on that on MOBAs in all sorts of ways.
Coming out of the woods, dude, just like killing 3 enemies. You're just like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got another one here. This is for Huber. I don't know if Huber knew about a Diablo 4 prototype that was attempting to play like Batman Arkham.
No. No. What?
Oh, I thought you lived it all, Huber. I thought you lived the whole story.
No, but hey, I lived as a fan, not an expert. I never said I was an expert. You're the expert, bro. I am a consumer and a fan first above all.
No,
my entry into Warcraft was classic Neighbor Kid TM. Love Neighbor Kid. He had Warcraft 1 and 2 on his PC.
Nice.
So anytime I spent the night at his house, all night long Warcraft, and then the rest is history.
Nice, amazing.
Yeah,
Hades was so what happened was, Diablo 3, they decided not to do a second expansion for Diablo 3 after Reaper of Souls for various reasons that the book gets into. I'm looking down because I'm looking for something. Hold on. I gotta find this. I gotta show my cred here. Where is this thing?
dude, Reaper of Souls was good.
Oh, here, I found this one. Like, check this out. Brood War, baby. StarCraft Brood War.
I love Brood War so much.
Oh, Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos.
Yes, Warcraft 3.
So they decided not to do a second expansion for Diablo 3, and instead they wanted to make like a quick Diablo 4. They wanted Diablo 4 out in like 2 years. So this guy, Josh Mascara, who is the director of Reaper of Souls, started working on this prototype and this idea called Hades, which was going to be Diablo 4, but totally different. They probably would have called it something else if it actually happened, like a Diablo : something or another. But it was third person, kind of like a Dark Souls style camera, Arkham style combat. And really nothing like Diablo. Would have been very different. It would have been like a roguelike, so like permadeath. Just very...
That sounds pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
on paper.
Who knows? You never know with cancel games what could have been cool, what might have not been cool.
Totally.
But yeah, that project was canceled like in 2016, and Mascara left the company, and did not work out. But I think people were feeling like it wasn't going to work out anew because there were a lot of issues. Like in Arkham, so much of the combat is based around you getting surrounded by thugs and being able to have time dilate so you can kind of slow-mo take them out one at a time, and that doesn't work with multiplayer. Like if you have other people, like how could you possibly make that work? So they cannot find a way to make that work, and yeah, it just didn't work out for many reasons. And then did not take another 2 years. It took many more years, 10 more years to get a Diablo 4 out the door. But shortly after Hades was canceled, they wound up starting to work on what they called Fenris, which was the code name for Diablo 4 that actually came out.
Sick.
Which, by the way, Vessel of Hatred, the new expansion, comes out the same day as my book, which I think is very funny.
Oh,
That's awesome.
That is amazing. Yeah.
That's poetic.
You can listen to the audiobook of Play Nice while you play Diablo 4.
That is very awesome.
I'm curious, with that, cancellation and then some of the other canceled projects, did you ever get a chance to see some things that you didn't get to see before, or was it all verbal?
I did. I saw some footage of various things. I should probably. I don't know if I have permission. If the people involved would want me to say what I saw, but I did see some things, which was helpful in terms of me being able to contextualize things and explain some of the stuff that I saw. Yeah. But it's not. I mean, it's cool to see, but it's not like it's gonna blow people. It would blow people's minds if there was footage on the internet or something. They would just be like, "Oh, this is cool."
Right. Nice. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, so I'm trying to skip some of my questions because I'm trying to okay, what's going to be most interesting for the people? Yeah, with Titan, it seems like one of the things that made that sort of a problem was what was referred to as seagull management.
Yep.
And it's kind of back to what you were talking about, Huber, about you need somebody to be in charge there.
You got to have your champion that wants to make the game, that is passionate and has the vision, for sure.
Yeah, and so what seagull management basically was one of the, it was like co-directors, right? And one of the guys that just come in and poop on ideas. He wasn't around most of the time.
Yeah, seagull managers, when you come in, you poop, and then you leave. Yeah, so what happened was on Titan, there was a guy named Rob Pardo who was a top executive at Blizzard for a long time, and he was the steward for a lot of games, Brood War and Warcraft 3 and stuff like that, and he had lead design chops. And he was a controversial manager. A lot of people took issues with the way he would talk to people and the way he would manage folks. And by the time Titan came around, he was the director on that game, but he was also essentially chief creative officer. I believe that was his title at a certain point, but essentially he was overseeing all of the games at Blizzard. And so he didn't have a ton of time to just focus on Titan. And so what he did was he hired these two guys. One was named Matt Brown. He came from Maxis and The Sims, and the other was a guy named Jeff Kaplan, who was a former World of Warcraft designer. And the two of them were each responsible for a different part of the Titan project. Kaplan was responsible for the shooting part, the combat part, the superhero part, and Matt Brown was responsible for the Simsy Animal Crossing part, which that's what Titan was, by the way. There's a big, I dropped an excerpt on Polygon this week that explains what Titan actually was and how it got canceled, if you want to go check that out. And so Pardo, those two people were kind of in charge of the project, but Pardo would come in and offer his own views every once in a while, and sometimes that would lead to throwing out months of work. Sometimes he wouldn't make calls when calls needed to be made. He wouldn't make a decision because for various reasons. I think a lot of people think that there was a lot of pressure on following up on World of Warcraft because the idea of this project was that it was going to be the next big thing for Blizzard, the next lucrative moneymaker.
Oh yeah, Bobby Kotick bragging about it to all kinds of random people, right?
To Tom Brady. Tom Brady is one of my favorite anecdotes. A guy brings in Tom Brady to meet some Blizzard people. Hey, these are the guys who made World of Warcraft, and now they're making the next big thing, right? And so Yeah, because of that kind of lack of decision making, it tried to do too much at once. It was like, and nobody really knew what it was. Like, it didn't have a core gameplay loop that worked. And so it got shut down and got canceled in 2013. Of course, Jeff Kaplan would go on to stay with a small group of people and work on what would then become Overwatch. So one of the biggest hits in Blizzard's history and video game history. But Titan fell apart, and that was a big blow. That was kind of the beginning of the end for Blizzard's autonomy and for Blizzard just kind of like being able to operate independently from their corporate influences, I would say.
Are you allowed to say how much money they lost on that?
Oh yeah, $80 million.
80 mil.
That is something that
that's low. I thought it'd be higher.
it is.
Actually.
Yeah, it's lower.
Yeah.
When I heard that number, I also thought it was lower than I thought. But here's the thing. The biggest reason, two big reasons why someone like Bobby Kotick would look at that and be like, what the hell? One is that the money they spent doesn't matter quite as much as having to remove the future expected revenue from their like estimates and predictions and spreadsheets. That is a big one. The second one is the opportunity cost. All of those people who were on it for potentially 7 years were people who could have been on the World of Warcraft machine, who could have been putting out expansions for World of Warcraft, who could have been making other stuff that would actually make the company money. And so that might be the biggest problem, is that like Titan was meant to be the all-stars of Blizzard. It was a lot of people who were like World of Warcraft OGs, people who had been at the company for 10 plus years. And so to have them all be on this project that just went nowhere is a big loss for Blizzard from an opportunity cost standpoint.
Wow. Good insight.
You want more? Read the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then later in the book, you get into the controversies and all of that stuff and the California lawsuit. But I found it really interesting that you made a point of kind of debunking and recontextualizing some of those stories that were like the big things that were getting passed around all the time, like the Cosby room and like the cube crawls and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, this isn't exactly like how I heard about it the first time around. But at the same time, the problems of the workplace culture were very, very real and like maybe more disturbing than just those anecdotes might sound.
Yeah, it's like, man, it really bothers me because like when you have these splashy headlines and like people tweeting about the Cosby suite, it almost makes it seem like it was a cartoonish problem and that like, oh, most companies can't be this evil. Oh, this is like a Blizzard thing. They were a bunch of sex pests. Like let's write off Blizzard forever. Oh, it can't happen in other companies like that. They don't have a Cosby suite. It does a disservice to everybody involved because in real life, and I'll tell the Cosby suite story in a second, but in real life, like a lot of the problems at Blizzard were pretty chillingly common to the problems at other video game studios and other companies that are mostly men, that are male dominated, because a lot of it is just kind of like discrimination and subtle harassment or like boys club culture where like the only way to get ahead is to be going out to the strip clubs with the bosses or like going to cigar clubs with the boys, like that sort of thing. Some people used to joke at Blizzard that like if like the best way to get ahead is like to go like on a strip club trip with like one of the managers or something like that. It's really a lot of more subtle systemic stuff that makes for less splashy headlines. So yeah, let me talk about the Cosby suite thing, because that has become kind of one of the lasting images of Blizzard. So in 2021, when the lawsuit was filed, California filed this lawsuit for sexual misconduct and discrimination against Blizzard, against all of Activision Blizzard. The lawsuit was later settled for some $55 million. And I think it was one of those settlements where like the parties involved do not like admit to any wrongdoing, yada, yada, yada. So in the lawsuit, which was very sloppy in general, and I talk about this in the book, how sloppy and misleading the lawsuit could be. The lawsuit says that there was this hotel room at BlizzCon that was like known as the Crosby Suite. They called it the Crosby Suite. Which
the misspelling.
Yeah, adds to the sense of like sloppiness. Named after alleged rapist Bill Crosby, they said. And then after that, after people kind of seized upon that, there was an article on Kotaku that got a picture of like 8 Blizzard employees kind of smiling in front of this framed picture of Bill Cosby, which, I mean, obviously is horrifying. It's like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is here. But what isn't really detailed and what the book kind of gets into is that the picture was taken in 2013. But it wasn't until a year later, in the fall of 2014, when a comedian named Hannibal Buress did this stand-up routine talking about how Bill Cosby was an alleged rapist, that then the allegations against him resurfaced and became widely known. Before that, very few people actually knew anything about Bill Cosby being accused of anything. The public image of Bill Cosby when this photo was taken was that he was just like the guy, like legendary comedian. People did not know, and that is extremely easy to prove if you look at the timeline of events leading up to, because it was after this Hannibal Buress routine that like it exploded, and that was when new allegations came out, articles came out, and so on and so forth. So these people, and then if you think about it for 30 seconds, it really makes no sense that like high-ranking Blizzard executives would be posing smiling in front of a picture of Bill Cosby. Like, even if they were like horrible people, like who would do that? And then it makes even less sense when you realize that the pictures that were on Kotaku were taken from someone's Facebook page where he was proudly posting them. Like,
right.
No matter how twisted you are, like something about it doesn't like add up until you realize the timing of it all. And then as a result of this picture, 2 different people, the book reports, I report in this book, 2 different people got fired for just being in that picture at their jobs post Blizzard. They were not at Blizzard anymore. They were at different companies, and they were fired from the jobs because they were in this Kotaku article. The reality is that this was like a running joke within this group of guys, because the hotel at one of their conventions like a few years earlier had a carpet that looked like a Bill Cosby sweater, and so it became this inside joke to call their suite every year the Cosby Suite. And they found this dumb picture like at a yard sale or something and brought it in as like a running joke because of the Cosby sweater thing. Nobody knew at the time, and I spoke to men who were in there, I spoke to women who were in there. Nobody knew anything about Bill Cosby being an accused sex pest at this point. So it was just like the worst coincidence in the world, where these people were posing in front of a photo that legitimately seemed completely harmless in 2013, but in 2021, when it got splashed on the front page of Kotaku, it was enough for them to lose their jobs. Then there's another wrinkle, which I won't get into super detailed because this is already going long, but short version is the guy who was running this suite, this guy Alex Afrasiabi, was in fact accused of a lot. He wasn't in the picture involved, but he was accused of a lot of bad behavior, including harassment and misconduct and sexual, groping people in some cases. So you have this added complication of the fact that, like, as one woman describes it in my book, she's like, I haven't seen anything, like, the only nefarious thing I saw happen at this Cosby suite was Alex being like himself, like a jerk and like a harasser. But like everything else in this was just like a party and a suite, and happened to have this inside joke that like half of us didn't even understand, and nobody at the time knew about Bill Cosby. So being able to explore this in nuance, I'm glad that the book is able to do it, as like unfortunate it is that was all so badly misreported. And I hope and I think that one of the takeaways people will have from this book is that, like, using Cosby Suite to refer to like Blizzard's issues is a misnomer, is not something that people should be doing. And I think people will come away from this realizing, like, oh, Blizzard did have a lot of issues, and a lot of them are kind of more nuanced than like this idea of people like worshiping a picture of an alleged sex pest, because like that did not happen, nor would it happen, nor does it make any logical sense to think about it.
And then I guess, the last thing I just kind of get into sort of where we get to the kind of current day closing of things.
Yep.
and just what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where with Microsoft coming in, and even before Bobby Kotick kind of retook power of Activision, like before Blizzard like benefited from being like this tiny little thing in a larger spreadsheet, and then under Activision is like everything that they did mattered, and now under Microsoft it's not going to matter again. So now they have freedom. Then at the same time, like, every time it just felt like when like good news hit, then layoffs hit afterwards. Right?
Yeah,
like,
God.
record profit for Activision, things go down. Then like what you said at the beginning of this year, like, oh, we finally got Microsoft won, and then they get laid off. So
this is what I was talking about earlier with like how the original ending would not have been totally appropriate now. Okay, so it's interesting. A lot of people have been asking me like, what's the future of Blizzard look like? Are they going to have that freedom and that autonomy and that agency again? And I just don't know. And I think my answer a year ago would have been very different. And the reason I don't know is because Xbox this year has just been such a shit show. And I think that it's very clear that the people who run Xbox are just under all sorts of pressures from above to cut costs and like show profits. And as a result, there's no way to know what they're going to do with Blizzard. Like, we don't even know if they're still going to be a first-party developer in 2 years, let alone what they're going to do with Blizzard. I think there were some people holding out hope like last year that being part of Xbox with the focus on Xbox Game Pass, maybe they could make some smaller games, some games that like don't have to be billion-dollar franchises and can just fit nicely into that Game Pass model. But now, like, who knows? Is Xbox Game Pass still going to be the focus a year from now? Like, nobody knows what Xbox's long-term plan is, including most likely like people at the top of Xbox. So it's really hard to know what's going to happen to Blizzard. And yes, to your point, Blood, it's like every time something good happens, something bad comes with it. It's really been unfortunate. And yes, when they were part of Vivendi pre-Activision, they were like a small part of a bigger machine and they had a lot more agency. And then they were part of Activision Blizzard, and suddenly Mike Morhaime, the CEO of Blizzard, had to be on earnings calls every quarter explaining himself to investors and to the street. And then now as part of Microsoft, the hope was that they would, like, it wouldn't matter if they delayed a game. It wouldn't change Microsoft's stock if they delayed something. But who knows? It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. I think the sense I've gotten from talking to people who are at Blizzard right now is that a lot of people are just kind of waiting. There's definitely some optimism around the new president, Johanna Faries. She seems like she knows what she's doing. A lot of people have respect for her, but like people are just kind of waiting to see what happens. And I mean, I think that's true all across Xbox. Like a lot of people don't know what's going to happen, or just waiting for the axe to keep dropping, for like to know where things are going to play out. If they're going to be releasing their games on PlayStation, like nobody really knows what's going to happen when it comes to Xbox. So the future of Blizzard, spoilers for the end of the book, the future is a big question mark.
Yeah. Cool. You have anything else you want to pick a brain about?
Nailed everything.
Okay.
Thank you guys for
Very
letting me
thorough.
ramble.
I love it, Jason.
Yeah, thank you guys for letting me go on and on
Yeah.
about this book. But like, you can probably tell this isn't like, I want to say real quick, books don't make any money. The reason I want this book, the reason I want people to read this book, and the reason I wrote this book is because I'm really like personally satisfied by it and like happy with it. And I want people to read it because it's a great story and I think they'll get a lot out of it. I don't care if people buy it or they get it at the library. I just want it to do well enough that I can keep writing books. But like, there's a reason that I haven't quit my day job to just write books all day, folks.
Right.
And Bloomberg treats us well. Bloomberg, I'm doing fine at Bloomberg, but like books are not making money. So people who are out there being like, I can't believe Jason is like shilling his book on podcasts just to like line his pockets. Like, you really need to understand the economics of the book publishing industry, which is that they don't exist.
Nice. All right, so we're gonna give you a little bit of a break.
Love it.
You can
Love
definitely
it, dude.
throw in here as much as you want. But Dawn, you've been playing a game called Iron Meat. Isla had to leave the control desk, so Dawn's back there right now. So he'll tell us about it while he plays his B-roll. This is him playing right now. Tell us about this game. It's like Contra?
Yes, definitely a little bit like Contra, blood. I'm talking meat, boy.
Talking meat, boy.
Gotta call out the famous, iconic Bloodworth lyric on the nutrition raps. Easy Allies nutrition traps. But yeah, we're talking meat here. This invasive meat, okay? Experiments on the moon have gone wrong, and
Okay.
now we have this meat on Earth, actually. It feeds on metal and iron, all sorts of metal.
Dawn,
and
I
yes.
gotta stop you for a
Go
half a
ahead.
second.
Stop me many times if you can. I'm gonna try to. Yeah.
Dawn,
Yeah.
yesterday on my timeline, I saw that they are now 3D printing meat.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
3D printing meat, dude. Iron meat is prophetic.
I'd heard about that
synthetic
actually a while ago, Huber.
Are you talking about synthetic meat? Sorry.
This is like some new way, Damiani. They're like, it's like different.
Yeah, if it's synthetic. Yeah,
It's like synthetic.
Ye-
They're like growing it somewhere.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
like a
that's-
printer, right? Like a 3D printer. You print up like a chicken drumstick
Yeah.
or whatever.
Right.
yeah. But, yes. Okay,
It's
I was
a
curious.
nice idea.
I was-
It's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Go ahead, though.
I mean,
game.
yeah, I can imagine far the future. Microwave would just be like you press instead of ever putting something in, you just fill it
Hydrate
up
the
with-
pizza.
Yeah. Hydrate.
I got that reference.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, disturbing reality is maybe closer than Huber makes a good point. This disturbing reality, everybody, is closer, perhaps, than we all may know. Here it is again. Let's take a look at the meat taking over the world. This is a modern retro style run and gun shooter. Okay. Now the amazing thing about this is, from my understanding, it's pretty much just made by one individual, Ivan Suvorov. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. 2017, he began on this. This is a self-taught programmer and self-taught artist for the most part. Yeah, and then he hooked up with Retroware in 2019. They provided him some support. He was able to finish the game that is now out. This is available now, okay? And it's good. I'm going to get into it a little bit. But Retroware, by the way, if you're into kind of like real quality retro, modern retro titles, look into Retroware a little bit, Hubert. The catalog
the
is
horror thing's coming.
shockingly
Isn't that them?
good. The horror thing? I don't think so.
The,
actually.
I don't
Horror
think
thing.
there's
Isn't that
retro in the
Retroware?
name of that, but I don't think that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think that
Different?
might be. Yeah,
Different?
that might be different.
Not
That might be
affiliated.
different, Yeah.
Got it.
But anyway, here you see it, Hubert. Simple action, immediately identifiable as, yes, Contra. This looks like Contra.
Some good meat enemies, Don. That thing had like its head ripped open with some teeth.
What you're thinking of is Retro Realms.
Retro Realms.
Oh, that's it,
Got
bud,
it.
yeah.
Honest mistake.
Yeah. So the art style is awesome, as you can see. Beautiful pixel art. The control feels excellent. Simple. 2 weapons that you swap back and forth between, just like Contra. You can remap the buttons if you need to, which I really appreciate. They've got the lock in place so that then you can rotate the gun all around. Lock your body in position with the trigger or whatever. And simple. No extra boost. You can pick up little kind of items that'll enhance the weapons you do have, so it does become a very strategic thing as the game goes on, of like obtaining certain weapons, trying to kind of enhance them for the right opportunity, to use them in the proper way and everything, holding on to specific weapons and stuff. And it's just a lot of fun. I think one of the things that it does so good, Huber, not only does it feel good just gameplay-wise.
Looks
I mean,
good.
this kind of game, Huber, it takes about 5 or 10 seconds before okay, this is either like good, it feels right, and let's see how far they take it, or like immediately, something's a little slippery here, something doesn't quite feel, and that's how this game is. 10 seconds in, you're like, this is very promising.
Hell yeah.
Hours
Good
in,
bones.
You're like, heck yeah, hours in, and it pays off. The difficulty is so well balanced.
That's what I was going to
on
ask
this
you
game,
about.
Huber.
Difficulty, checkpoints, and
Yeah.
bosses.
So let me tell you a little bit about it. Look, Contra, we all love this franchise. One of its biggest problems, I think, all through all the really almost every single edition, whatever version of Contra, is the difficulty. There's always some odd difficulty thing. There's usually some sort of imbalanced things, or just some frustrating spikes, or it's very hard to like play a Contra all the way through and not have some of like partial, almost jank kind of stuff. Just stuff where you're like, oh, that was a tiny bit cheap, whatever. Anyway, the way they handle difficulty in this game, very, very nice. Basically, no checkpoints. You have long stages, though, no checkpoints, but they give you a generous amount of lives. The lives is how they balance out the difficulty, Huber. So, yes, when you go up to hard and this and that, enemies do get a little bit more hit points, and you do get additional enemies. However, the real crucial thing is just managing your lives throughout the course of the stage. And because there are these long stages, Huber, this is why it's so satisfying. You don't get into that common Contra thing where you're like, you hit this certain wall in the level, and you're just like replaying the whole level, replay the whole level, replay the whole whatever.
For that one damn part.
Or even, some of the stuff Volgar 2 suffered from earlier, where even though you have checkpoints, you still get this like painful, repetitive nature. This one is so satisfying because it has these long stages. You got to manage your lives depending on what kind of difficulty you're playing with. And then it becomes a matter of perfecting it after that and cranking up the difficulty after that. You know, when you can get through on 10 lives or 15 lives, then you crank it up to 8, you know, and this and that. And it's all works because it's built on very satisfying gameplay, stage design. They use a bunch of familiar mechanics that we've seen in the past, but it's like one of those things where they just do it right. It's sweet.
Hell yeah.
It's satisfying. Fun.
I'm thinking of the one we played at Easy Livin' that Ben was obsessed with, too. Does anyone remember that game? It was the last Contra game we played. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. We played it at Easy Livin'. It had a really sick name that I used to just yell all the time like I do.
Was it an actual Contra game?
Yeah, it was like Contra.
Okay,
It
so
was
it
sick.
wasn't
I don't know, we're
Hunt
thinking-
Down or whatever.
It was not Hunt
We're
Down,
thinking
it was
of,
Hunt Down.
and we were playing Galuga, which is also fun to stream.
Galuga.
That's fun to stream.
How are
Blazing Chrome.
Blazing
That's it.
Chrome, dude.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm getting shades of Blazing Chrome here, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
How are the bosses done?
So the bosses are pretty great. We might see some boss stuff here coming up soon. Oh no, I guess maybe we missed the boss stuff. I'm gonna have to replay it for.
I mean, I saw that we definitely had some
I saw a
zombie
big, like,
vehicles
face
in
and
there.
shit, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
pretty nuts,
So
the
boss-
trains and everything.
The bosses are large, huge, full screen filling enemies that you would expect to encounter in this type of game, and they're good. I just think it's a really well balanced. They start off not too extreme, but by the time you get halfway through the entire game, there's a nice difficulty, and by the time you're getting to some of the last levels, you got to hit these things over and over and over again and really learn. And that's when the weapon selection becomes critical, where you got to kind of figure out how to obtain within
That's
that
great.
stage
That's
leading up to
great.
it. You really got to figure out which weapons, especially because they're multi-stage bosses. So you really got to figure out, okay, I need the upgraded. I need to end with the upgraded shotgun, and I need this upgraded whatever, grenade launcher, whatever it is, and so that then I got to be able to get to the boss so far here, and I got and the nice thing about it too is when you with balancing these weapons, when you take a loss on the life, like if you have your other weapon selected, you can pretty much protect that weapon, in other words. So you can just stay on your default machine gun with that first life if you want to protect that kind of upgraded weapon in your second slot. Also, the music, blood. Oh my God. It friggin' shreds. Just shredding
Fire
guitars,
meat.
thumping percussion, blasting your brains out. It feels so good. It's so good. They don't really promote who the musician is on the site or anything, so I'm not aware of who did it, but the soundtrack is killer also. Just heavy metal. That's what it is. Heavy metal. But
Don,
good
I don't
metal.
need any more games on my backlog, bro. What are you doing?
You got to throw this one on there. It's so fun too. I mean, replay.
He had another one
through the
today. He asked me for another one, and I looked at it like, what the heck? What is this? This looks
I
cool as
can't
heck
wait.
too.
Yes.
Okay, so
Nice.
you'll hear about that one in a week or two.
Hell
Hopefully,
yeah.
if all goes well. Yeah.
It's so beautiful, like anytime I see people being jaded with video games, like they don't make them like they used to, like games are so boring, remakes, remasters, AAA, blah blah blah. It's like there are so many genres served every year. You've just got to look.
Yeah.
Like this year I've been hitting a lot of Metroidvanias. So many Metroidvanias.
Yeah, it's
and
insane.
now here we get a Contra like. So awesome, Don.
Nice.
Yes. Thank you, Blood.
And then now it's your turn. Mortal Kombat 1 Chaos Reigns.
Yeah, Don.
I know Don's got questions here.
Don,
I want
bro.
to hear about this. I've fallen off the. Recently, I've fallen
Same.
off the more.
Same.
I'm out of the loop on this thing. I'm feeling like a Mortal Kombat casual.
Okay, I'm just waiting
Please
for
tell
you
me
to
this
drop
one.
stuff during this discussion, Don. That proves that's not true,
Yeah.
but okay.
This is good.
It is.
Chaos Reigns is
I've
good.
definitely heard mixed things.
I liked it because first and foremost, I think the Mortal Kombat storyline has jumped the shark and gone so far off the rails that I despise it. I despise where they've gone with this whole multiverse bullshit. Like, the multiverse is so tired, and that's all Mortal Kombat 1 is about. It's about the multiverse. This expansion is no different, but I was shocked that I was invested in this multiversal story.
Okay.
And that's because of Havoc. Havoc is the primary villain of this expansion, and he is great. He is great. Also, Dawn, one of the most important things about this expansion, way less characters than the base game, because the base game you have to jump from character to character to character to character to character
Yes.
because they want to introduce the entire roster.
Right.
This focuses on a pretty small group of characters that are trying to stop Havoc. So it's a little more focused. It's a little more intimate, Don. The primary players in this story, first up, Sub-Zero and Scorpion.
Awesome.
Give us what we want. Sub-Zero and Scorpion, extremely good story beats in this expansion. I was very happy with what they did with Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Also, the characters introduced are, because if you get this expansion, which is too fucking expensive.
This is one thing I
Warner
want to ask
Brothers
you about.
needs to
Is it
fucking
like 40 or something?
$50.
My
What?
bones rattled when I saw that
Dude!
price. You want to talk about a fatality? I thought my heart
Yeah!
exploded, Huber.
It is insane. Like, and like, sure, the production values are there. Like, $50 for an expansion, first up, is insane. But on top of the history of microtransactions and nickel and diming the fan base, like this Mortal Kombat needs to be stopped. Like, it is out of hand. It is out of control and unacceptable. I do not approve. That aside, the characters included in this, because it comes with Combat Pack 2, which is a bunch of characters, Cyrax, Sector, and Noob Saibot available right when you get it, and they're integral to the story. And then later we're gonna get Ghostface, the T-1000, and Conan.
Yeah.
They're not there yet, so I didn't get to play them. They're coming later.
Got it.
But Cyrax, Sector, and Noob Saibot Dawn, really fun. First up, Sector plays like frickin' Iron Man.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
They hype up the suit, the armor, like it's some big deal. Like, other fighters are like, holy shit, like, you have that armor? That's crazy. Like, so they really hype up that. It's really cool. And Noob Saibot done. That's all I gotta say.
Yes.
Incredible to play as, and incredible lore around the character. Like, I'm just really happy with the story of Chaos Reigns. I don't know if it hit as hard as Aftermath, but I just really like when Mortal Kombat is a little smaller scale. And that's not to say that this expansion didn't go into crazy multiversal shenanigans, but it still didn't lose the focus of this small, tight-knit group, primarily Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and Cyrax and Sector. So I really liked that aspect of it.
Nice.
For $50 though, like one thing was crazy to me. So not a spoiler, but like Havoc, the new arenas are really cool. Just like Havoc's kind of otherworldly areas, they're really cool. But he has this one area called the Maze, and it's basically like Cube, if you ever seen that horror movie, or like, you know, some basically like this haunted area where the characters are going through, and like spikes are coming out, and traps are falling from the ceilings, and, you know, walls are squishing people, and it's like, it got me really excited. I was like, oh, are we gonna get some like new gameplay here? Like, are we gonna get that faux Shaolin monks nod, or like, are we gonna get a different type of, just like a different mode, just something different, something to chew on for this price tag, for this level of cost to enter this. Like a 3-hour campaign is just not.
Yeah.
It does not warrant that price.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
So I was
Yeah,
hoping
for
for
sure.
like that was the biggest criticism, is like, wow, you're gonna hype up this like potentially really cool zone and not do anything around it. You're just gonna give me like 3 hours more of the campaign where I'm just fighting like crappy computer characters. Like, so that was disappointing, but you know. Price and baggage of the franchise aside, removing that, the story was focused. good long time fan service with the lore for some certain characters, and specifically Sector and Noob Saibot are very fun to use. So.
Yeah, cool. And I know these. This isn't actually. I think this is the only free part. Is the animalities, right? They give you free animality.
Animalities are free. Animalities are free. They threw us a bone, Don.
Yeah, it is literally a tusk. Did you get to mess around with any of the animalities? Do they have any? Do they contain any humor? I mean, these used to be one of the funniest parts of the old.
Did not mess around with any animalities, really. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
some good fatalities, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Gosh.
And dude, one of the coolest things was Cyrax, dude. I feel like you'd appreciate this.
Yeah.
So she has. I was like, where the hell is the net? Right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Where's the net?
So her normal is she throws this like goo on you, and it's just this goo that expands, and you're like stuck in this goo. But if you enhance it,
Oh, I like that.
she shoots the net out at you, and it's like really strong. It's like your character's like whoa with the net. It's really cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, who knows where Mortal Kombat goes from here? But some things definitely need to change with pricing, structure, and additional modes. You know, they just, it's so tough because the campaign is such high production value. Like the cutscenes are 10 out of 10 almost every time. The fight choreography, the visuals, everything about the cutscenes are just so high budget. You feel that. But then when you beat the campaign in Mortal Kombat, I feel like I'm always just left wanting more. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky with fighting games, and it's
Definitely.
like it always feels like there's like like you're saying, it's like you just want there's something
Yeah.
else thrown in there.
Well, because I really liked Injustice 2's like never-ending mode. You would like level up your characters and get all this cool stuff, and it was like pretty awesome. And it just feels like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat needs maybe something like that. I don't know. But
Cool.
yeah, like the invasion mode's done. It just never really.
Yeah, I certainly thought for 50, they'd maybe throw a little bit more of that or something
Yeah.
at you, some other thing. It's hard to figure out. I'm
Yeah.
curious how this will do, I guess, too, because the Aftermath
Aftermath
did
was
quite
sick.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it did well.
No, it was crazy because I played through this the last day or two thinking it wasn't even out because I've heard nothing.
Oh, sure.
Nothing. I was like, wait, this is like out. This is like, this is not like some pre-order, anything, like early access. Like, this thing came out and I have not seen a lick of info or hype or commentary whatsoever. Just kind of feels like it came and went. But everyone's got their own algorithms out there, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. No, I feel like I've definitely seen some people talking about it, but
Yeah.
it was not always that positive. But
Yeah.
price is definitely going to be
The price is insane, and
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you to pick it up for that price.
The price is the only thing having me pump the brakes a little bit on
Yeah.
it. And not only that, I think the other thing, too, that maybe would have made it more tempting, at least, is if all those characters were just available right now. But because
Yeah.
they're not, and obviously, T1000 and everything,
T1000.
this is what we're waiting for. So it's like, let's see these characters roll out, and
Yeah.
maybe there's something, we can by then, maybe I can
I could
collect
see
enough
that.
pennies
Yeah,
for my
people just
couch.
want to get it all at once.
I definitely want to see T1000 done
Oh, yes.
so badly.
Super pumped. And honestly, Ghostface too. I think Ghostface out of all the
Yeah.
characters, in terms of a move set, you can just really, your mind goes, oh yeah, this could fit so nicely. A mix
Totally.
between kind of like Molina and someone.
Have Kano as Ghostface cameo, knife specialists.
That'd be cool.
All right, we've got more to come, but if you've been enjoying the show so far, please take a second to like and subscribe, ring that bell on YouTube, leave us a podcast review, tell your friends, all that good stuff. It helps us and it helps you stay connected. Also, if you want to sponsor this podcast, you want to get your name right here in this space where I'm talking right now, you can get in touch with us. You can email us at info@easyallies.com. That's info@easyallies.com. Or get a hold of us however you can, and we will get you the details. Damiani, it's time to talk Zelda.
All right. I'm gonna.
And then Jason and I think, are basically about the same point. We've both done the desert dungeon as our second, I suppose.
I was gonna say, yeah, because
so eager.
you can pick your order at that point, so
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily give us all the information, but knowing that it was your second one, that does help.
Yeah. So when they give you the choice between dungeons, I went to the desert. The other one is up there still.
Yeah. I'm going to pull a Huber here and say, let me get the negatives out of the way first.
Get it out of the way.
Because
Get it
I'm
out of the way,
mostly
yeah.
very positive on this game. And if you watch any of my full playthrough of the game over the weekend, I was kind of reiterating these constantly, especially in the later hours of Saturday and Sunday. My biggest complaint with the game, because it's a game about Zelda using her powers to clone items and enemies in the game, and they become echoes that you can then place and either use them to traverse the environment or use them in combat, because Zelda can't directly attack in this game. She can do a really cool spin move that'll like cut grass, because they have to have cut grass, and impact other objects, but won't necessarily do direct damage to any enemies. So you gotta like fend for yourself using these echoes. There are like 127 of those in the game, and they're presented to you in this giant horizontal menu interface. So when you can apply 5 filters, but it got a bit ridiculous having to go through even like 30 or 40 of them. Just scroll. I'm like, all right. And then like when you go into the main menu, it's presented by like a 5 wide grid that just keeps going down, filling in how many you have. And that's not any better, honestly, because it just gets either too vertical or too horizontal. And it was just, okay, this is just pumping the brakes way too much now. And it was sometimes like I had a bad Joy-Con a little bit, where like the right analog wouldn't keep like moving over, and it would stop. And I'm like, oh, and then like if you let go, it brings whatever you selected to the front. I had it filtered by most recent, which I would probably recommend is maybe like the easiest to start with. But like when I picked the wrong thing, I'm like, oh my God, now I got to scroll all the way back to the middle of the list where they were. I was like, yeah, like maybe mess with that a little bit, and you might get like a little bit better mileage out of it. But I'm the UI is very reminiscent of Breath of the Wild. They've kind of used these UI elements and these menu designs since Breath of the Wild. Pretty much the same in 2019's Link's Awakening, same in Tears of the Kingdom. So if you're familiar with that UI design, they pretty much use it in this one as well. So this one just got on my nerves one too many times, and I hope they can figure. My best guess is that they just couldn't figure out a more elegant way to do that, because there are 127 things you have to be able to conjure up at a moment's notice, because it's so integral.
I do bounce between those filters quite a bit when I'm playing, because it's like if I get something new, then I immediately want to try it. So it's like, okay, the most recently thing collected, and then if when I'm using, like, obviously everyone's using the bed a lot, using the spiders a lot, and so yeah, the fact that those things that you're using more kind of filter towards the front of one of those filters is kind of helpful, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. There are still times when I'm like, I'm having to hold right for a ways to find something that I'm looking for, and I'm still like the first quarter of the game, so I haven't gotten a lot of things.
Yeah,
and there are some redundant things, right? Like different colored pots and stuff that don't really.
They're definitely things,
different.
but also at the same time, like there are multiple beds, and they showed in all the trailers that you can rest in bed to heal up, but they each come with an associated cost. You have a companion named Try, and they have these like floating triangles behind them, which are basically your echo meter. And it'll show you in each echo will show you the cost above them and how much they cost, anywhere from like 1 to up to like 6 for some of like the most expensive ones towards the end of the game. And so yes, while some of them are redundant, like there's better beds you can get that would heal you faster. But at the same time, when you're trying to like traverse, like, oh, I want the old bed because it costs less, and I'm trying to like make this makeshift stairway going up and up and up. So there is some of that.
And the second bed that I saw, like, it's the same size. Like, it's more effective for healing, but otherwise,
it doesn't offer any other. It's not more durable, as far as I understand, than the starter bed. So you're just getting like a healing advantage. So anyway, yes, there might be some things like as you get more powerful enemies, you're probably going to use like, here's my ground enemy. I don't need any of the other ones. Here's my flying enemy. Here's like my water enemy. You'll start like about halfway through the game. I had like a core set of about like 20 that was constantly bouncing between. And so I didn't really need to go that far down the list after a while, but there were parts I was like, oh, I need this thing. I haven't had to use it so long. And I'm like, oh, where is it? And it just, yeah, if there's any like more brilliant minds who are game designers will probably be paying, trying to tackle this with the inevitable sequel to this someday. And I hope that they find maybe a slightly better solution, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It just like was a big laugh on stream to just like see it just extending for like ever and just scrolling through it nonstop. Like, all right, this doesn't end. Similarly, related to the echoes, I think there's a bit of a learning curve to learning how to place some of the echoes in the game. And I really would have liked some kind of guidance system in terms of like just seeing an outline or just a silhouette or something
when
to
you
let
get
me
the
know
thing where you can move
so
them
I
into
can
the
know
distance.
to know where it's going to be placed specifically, and then you can shoot them further as well. That I kind of understood. It'll just go until it like hits something or goes off to the edge of the screen. But I'm talking more about like just next to you. Sometimes there are things that you don't know that are gonna like it's not gonna, even though you're facing north, there's something slightly in your way that you can't tell, and it's going to push it to the side a little bit. I'm like, I didn't know that was going to happen. Why did that happen? I was like, in this, too many times that was happening. I wish it could have just had that type of, quality of life feature. Something really simple.
Yeah,
I
you
think.
hold the button and you see a silhouette before you
and
confirm.
they already were doing that in like Tears of the Kingdom with the Ultra Hand. They were like, they were giving something like that. Just give me something similar like that in this game would have been fine. Last major thing, just the performance. Again, just like Link's Awakening, similar engine, might be the same engine. I don't know. It's same developer, Grezzo, but it did, chug. And it was interesting because anytime I went to a dialogue conversation with an NPC, it went to 60 frames smoothly. Yeah. But like when you exit that,
I've had times when I like will get into the water, and for some reason when I'm going underwater, then the frame rate improves. I'm like, cool. I'm like,
yeah, it was.
You definitely notice it in this
You notice
game,
it. Yeah. It's not like the worst thing. It's not even like that off-putting, honestly. It's just you do notice it. And for Huber, it's another indication that like maybe more powerful hardware would run this at a locked frame rate nicely. There were videos of it going around on a, I don't know if it's even a, you gotta be careful on Nintendo now. They're going after everything with the emulation word in it. So I don't want to like, invoke their wrath, but there are videos of it running at a much higher rate on like nice PCs. So like it could run better on better hardware, but like who knows like what that could be. But at the same point, this game doesn't look like it's that taxing. I still love this art style. There's like, I know some people
so nice,
don't like or didn't like it for Link's Awakening because this isn't a remake. It's not a remake, but like I think this will go over much better than before. But those are my three biggest chief complaints. Otherwise, I love everything that this game is doing. I feel like this is such a good blueprint for these top-down Zelda games going forward. Whether they stick with Zelda, whether they go with Link, because I'd like to see them move beyond it does reuse a little bit of a Link to the Past world, but it goes beyond it. It has more than just that. Like the core center is pretty much a version of a Link to the Past, and then on the outskirts it has more unique areas. They might be a little bit more based on more recent games, but it's a really unique style in terms of like the different activities, the way you explore, the way you're using these objects to traverse the environment. And I think the biggest thing for me is I think they found a way to have their cake and eat it too with how they handle dungeons and giving you an element of freedom, but also confining you to, you need to play by old school Zelda rules, or you need to solve puzzles in order to progress.
Yeah, you need keys to get through certain doors, and like a lot of the areas are, they're kind of constrained. Like you do have ceilings, and I like the way that they've been laid out. Like I said, the desert one, it has that interesting mix of like the interior and exterior areas.
That's what I was getting at. Like the still area, they're called like still areas. That's like the kind of the preface to the main dungeon. And those are a little bit more open in that you can use your echoes to kind of like, I want to go over this way, I want to go that way. There is like a final destination to reach, but it kind of encourages you to try and use your different echo abilities to just clear the objectives and reach the goal. Whereas when you get to the more proper dungeon, which has like a more traditional map, you'll see like the floors. We can talk about the map design later, but like it's a more traditional map, and it does allow some of that freedom, but you have to complete certain rooms. Like you said, the keys, but also like there's a puzzle in this room. You have to figure out this puzzle. Unless you're like a speed runner, who's using glitches, you're not bypassing this puzzle. You must do it in order to progress. And I kind of like that, where even what Tears of the Kingdom was doing with their dungeon design, I felt like they hadn't reconciled that yet, that there was just too many ways to bypass some of those more meaningful interactions that you get from older dungeons. And this felt like a good way of marrying the old with the new and giving me something that was a little bit of a both and felt satisfying. So it's a good direction I like with this. And they had really good theming, like better theming than I'd seen in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I would still like them to push a little bit more on it. I finished the game. I've seen all they have to offer. It's pretty good, but like it still doesn't stack up there, in my opinion, with someone like the better 3D or 2D top-down Zelda dungeons. But it's pretty strong, and like I think if they keep this up, they're gonna they're gonna have some really good dungeons going forward. I think they had to figure this out first. Learn to walk before you run.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they're showing. We've got the B-roll running now, and they showed the thing with the mole, which it just feels so cool because like Huber the mole, like you can actually use it because like in Link's Awakening, they have sort of like the side-scrolling parts too, where like you go down and it's you kind of platforming over things, but you can actually like use the mole to make like a shortcut hole through like soft sand areas.
Very fun.
And there's like sometimes where like you need to do that to get certain treasure chests and stuff. It's like figure out like, okay, where to put my little holes and stuff.
Nice.
And similarly, there's spots on the overworld where if you pay attention and like you put a hole in the right place, you will drop down into like a little cave or something.
Love that.
So.
Yeah, I think.
Let's get some thoughts from Jason in here since we've been.
Yeah, I've been quiet because I don't want to be a bummer, but I'm pretty underwhelmed by this game. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is that it makes combat into such a chore that I wish it wasn't in the game. I wish this was just like a puzzle game where you summon echoes and use them to explore. Like, the parts I enjoy most are like when you can break the boundaries of the map, or you think you're breaking the boundaries of the map to like go over the trees that are supposed to be the boundaries between two different sections, two different biomes, and like go into the jungle before it feels like you're supposed to, or something like that. Those I really enjoy. Things I don't enjoy is when a monster comes out, or 4 monsters come at you, and instead of just being able to swing your sword and kill them, you have to fumble your way through a menu, summon something. If it's a creature, you hope that the AI activates in the right way and that they actually take out the enemy in front of you. It just turns what feels like it should be over in 5 seconds into something that takes an extra minute, and just feels like it's wasting a lot of my time, which I really do not enjoy. Adding those extra steps to the process of just kind of meaningless encounters on the overworld is just not fun. And so instead I find myself just trying to dodge encounters because I don't want to have to go through the hassle of like summoning a moblin to kill them or whatever. And that's also not fun, because it's not fun to just have to like weave in and out of enemies as you're like exploring the overworld. So yeah, for me, it hasn't really worked all that well, but I'm willing to give it more time. I was just talking to the Giant Bomb guys a couple days ago, and they were saying that it clicked with them a little bit further than where you and I are, Blood. So maybe it'll get better.
I'll echo that, Jason. I felt like I was in the early goings. I was kind of like scrambling a bit to summon what I needed to summon. It felt like a little bit chaotic. But I feel like I did find a rhythm that started to work for me, where I knew to throw out this type of enemy, it would do this in almost every circumstance, and this was working very well. I will say, despite me feeling like I found a rhythm and I wasn't really having too much trouble with the combat at that point, I think the lock-on system needs a lot of work. Because that also kind of guides where your echo what they will focus on, and it was a there's not even like Nintendo's like the worst at giving you a lot of options, and I almost felt like, can you give me like a priority option where it'll like, because I always seemed to like default to my Echo to target them first or whatever was nearest. It's like, can I just have some options, or can you? It just didn't work very well, to the point like in intense, mostly boss battles where I needed to do something a little bit more precise. It kind of came undone a little bit for me, where I felt like I knew what I wanted to do, but it was a little bit more difficult to execute it because the targeting was getting in the way. And then also some of the AI logic with the echoes would start to not behave as they did before. And it was definitely frustrating. I will definitely give it that. I think the equalizer for me was that in those moments of panic, I would just activate swordsman mode and go, screw this. I'm just going back to like the traditional gameplay, and like here's the win button. Which I mean, I guess is like the life preserver they're throwing out there. It's like, okay, you're not completely sold on this, or you need more time with this. Okay, you can have a little bit of the old style of gameplay, and then
it's a tease because it's like, oh, I'm having fun, and then it's taken away from me.
I think it mostly works, and it just takes a bit of time. And I think going forward, if they want to revisit this, I do think they need to compromise a little bit on that. I think they need to offer a few more ways for direct combat that's more traditional. Because I think maybe you could cut down the echoes, but keep that sense of like exploration. Because when it's combat situations, the combat needs to feel good. And it seems like, it might be hit or miss on this with this type of system. But what I feel like it does so well, and what I'm most optimistic about, is the world exploration and what they're giving me incentive-wise to explore the world. Doing dungeons in different orders again. I love that. Having like caves where there might be an enemy or an echo type that's only in that cave. And I got to go in every cave. Or there's a straight up
I found one really early on. Yeah. That was like the P hat. And I'm like, okay, this guy's OP.
Yeah.
It was like OP hat.
I found a Wizrobe super early. I couldn't even summon it. I didn't have enough like triangles for it. I was like, half the game I'm like, funny. When do I get to summon this dude? It's gonna be so cool. In the like water area near the Zora, there was like there was a shipwreck, like a half sunk pirate ship. I'm like, yo, what is this? It's like a dungeon. It's like a mini dungeon with a boss at the end. So like they just have like more traditional mini dungeons and bosses, and significant rewards there. I liked how they had like mini games and side quests that would pay off. The smoothie thing in the end didn't really do a lot for me. I'll say that felt a lot like maybe if you play on master mode difficulty, it matters more. But I feel like on the standard difficulty, it was a fun kind of gimmick, but for completionist's sake, but it didn't feel like directly impactful in the moment. But accessories.
The main thing to me with the smoothie thing is I think it makes the sword fighter mode a little bit more like, if you want to use sword fighter more, you can just like make a bunch of smoothies to like refill your energy. Like it, and also like when I was exploring, every time you pick up some of those blue gems, like it just refills your meter. So I really. So far, I felt like the sword fighter is not as limited as I thought it would be, that I could use it a lot more often than I expected from the trailers.
Yeah, there's definitely ways to go about it. Like I was about to say, the accessories I think are very meaningful in this, because you can expand the slots you have. You start off with just one, and I think or two, and then you can expand it to multiple. And then these accessories give you different different traits they can use. Like my favorite one is the one that lets you like jump higher. It's like all of a sudden I don't need to summon an echo to get up on most low platforms anymore. I was like, ooh, that's really good. And then there's ones that do slow down your energy usage when you are in swordsman mode. And I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And other cool ones like that. So, and then obviously fashion. I actually, one of the things I was not going to say underwhelmed, but I wish they would have gone further on, is like, I wish there were way more outfits in this game. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have it beat still. I really wish, but shout outs to that cat suit, because it's actually has a function that lets you talk to all the cats in the game, and they will like give you clues and stuff. I was like, okay,
nice.
That's you go. Great. I was like, like more of this.
I saw a lot of cats, but now that you can talk to them, that makes sense.
they just dangle so many like different things for you to do. And as I said, seeing if it's possible, like, can I get up to this mountain area? Like, how many like things can I stack up here? And then like the game's like, yeah, you can get up here if you can do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it was,
So it's asking you to cheese it, Damiani.
Yes.
So you're stoked.
It is, Huber. But it's like in the top-down style of Zelda.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a question of whether that type of freedom and that type of like creativeness could translate into this style of Zelda. And I would say, like, despite any of its like faults, I think there's a resounding yes that there is, even if you don't think it fully succeeded this time, this definitely is a good blueprint for them to build upon to like, this is the way forward if they want to go with this type of direction. I think it does work.
Nice.
Immersive sim Zeldas are here to stay.
Yes, please.
Huber's a huge immersive
Yep.
sim fan. Yeah.
First person Zelda when?
Okay, Huber, one last thing. Link's house that you go to very beginning of the game, outside his house is an axe. And I tried using the echo thing. I was like, dude, like, is Link going to use an axe or something? Or can I use an axe? And I was like, but you can get enemies that wield axes, Huber. So there are
Nice.
axe wielding enemies. So
Sick,
you get
sick,
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to go too much into the story, but I really love the way that it kind of plays around with the expectations, and plays into like you playing as Zelda, you know, and it's like the fact that like no, they don't even know each other, you know, like it's just such a cool,
That is cool.
I love
little
that.
take on that. And then Damiani, like you were saying, it's like, yeah, it's like. It's a nod to like A Link to the Past, and like things are like generally in familiar areas, but it's still like it's one of those things that it's so different that it's just like every once in a while you'll come across a space and it's like, wait a minute, I recognize that ruin, or I recognize that little grove or whatever.
That's
and
very
it's
fun.
just
Yeah, they had those nods. I mean, I think they went further. I think they like one of the areas I think is more of a nod to like the Oracle games, and one of them I think is Link's Awakening, like the southern, like a little beach that you start at. I was like, oh, that's clearly a nod to Link's Awakening, and like
Right.
the whole Zora area is like, oh, this is very much like the Oracle of Ages area. It's like it was nice. It was kind of like paying tribute, and
so
honestly.
cool.
I like just did a whole like solo Q talk show episode recently about like Zelda timeline. I was like, wasn't even thinking about that stuff in this game because like it just detracts so much at this point that I liked what they were doing with like the character and story development. Like they have a good amount of like quirky characters in here. I liked Zelda's story. I liked the relationship between Zelda and her father.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, compared to how it was in like Breath of the Wild, where it's like this guy is like downright being like mean to Zelda. Like I mean, I'm sure he like loves his daughter, but like it came across as like, you have this destiny, you must do it. Like you don't
Right.
do anything, don't waste your time with anything else. Where this one was just like such a different relationship and much better portrayal, I felt like. And then like a lot of Link gets a lot of backstory where he usually didn't get a lot of backstory. It's like there's a story to Link here, and I actually appreciated that, where they're focusing more on the in-game narrative and character development and stop worrying so much about how these games are going to connect or anything like that. And the last little thing I want to say, because a little bit of like Zelda geeky nerdum stuff right here. For older fans, I feel like you can appreciate the kind of the meme of back in the day, people used to like call like Link and Zelda, because they're called The Legend of Zelda. So like real old school days, there would be friends who would go, oh, I'm playing as Zelda. I'm like, no, you're playing as Link. It says the hero is Link. In this game, a lot of people mistake you for Link instead of, so it's like the reverse of it. I was like quietly clapping. I was like, thank you for like paying tribute to that, because that's very nice, because to have those roles flip for once, it's like, yeah. And I think it speaks to a little bit more there, a little bit of their commentary on things. But yeah, I think it's a nice little game. It's not like reaching, in my opinion, it's not reaching like the highs of some of the best Zelda games. As I said, to close it out, I think it is just getting me more excited about what is possible with follow-ups to this game. Much like Breath of the Wild had me so excited. What the follow-up ends up being, that's a whole in their story. So like, you know, maybe it'll end up like Tears of the Kingdom, where it wasn't as high on it as, you know, maybe other people were. So you know, I just hope they do give this another go.
nice. Any other thoughts, Jason?
No, I want to give it more time before
Yeah.
I completely do away with it. But the problem is I'm switching between this and then another game that I'm itching to talk about that comes out next week on my Steam Deck, and that's been kind of absorbing me more. But
Yep.
I do want to give it more time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I struggle with that juggling all the time. So let's get into some headlines. A couple of bigger ones. Today, a new studio was announced called Day 4 Night, which is led by Mario plus Rabbids creator Davide Soliani and Christian Cantamessa, who worked as a lead designer on Red Dead Redemption and was also on Shadow of Mordor and Perfect Dark.
Put a line up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is funded by Crafton and One Up Ventures. They're going to be based out of LA and Milan. And there's some other Ubisoft Milan people that are coming over with Davide, including somebody who's like, basically they shipped Star Wars Outlaws and they're like, all right, I'm gone.
See you later. Good game.
Ed Freeze, who is over at One Up Ventures, is impressed though. The quote from their release says, when you see a lot of pitches like we do, it's always incredibly fun when you get to hear an idea that's completely new and original. This was easily the most creative thing we have seen in quite some time.
Okay.
So,
Big Zelda.
Red Dead Mario.
Red Dead Mario.
Hey,
Red-
we laughed,
Red Dead Rabbits.
laughed at the
Mario
leaks of
Redemption.
Rabbids, right? We thought that was like insane. You know, combining.
What
those-
this says to me is that Ubisoft is never making another Mario and Rabbids game. Because the second one apparently underperformed and
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
not interested in that series anymore.
Wild.
potentially, the other thing could be
I
that
believe that.
he wanted to move on, and they're like, no, we got to make another one for Switch 2. And he's like, I've got it. Like, I've got all my ideas out there.
Could be, but it seems
Because
like
wasn't
he
that
was
one
pretty...
of the? Wasn't that one of the things that they had said? Like, is like their lessons learned is like, oh yeah, Nintendo only like does like some of these games like Mario Kart like once per generation, and we try to do two, and so I don't know. It could go either way.
Yeah, my gut is that they're probably going to move on from Mario and Rabbids. Whoever's left at like Ubisoft and Nintendo, I think, doesn't preclude them from doing more. Obviously, deals to make other similar, other types of crossover or licensing their characters to be developed. But Mario and Rabbids, I think, that's probably the last I think we'll hear of that. I'm just being honest. I don't think it's getting a third or follow-up entry.
Yeah. But to that quote about creativity, though, I mean, that is one thing that Mario plus Rabbids, like, it went all out, man.
Yeah,
It really did.
I think that's what's most exciting is like what they can come up with that's new. And honestly, yeah, I don't expect it to be anything like what we just saw them work on. So I think that would be like a mistake. I'm just like kind of like curious, like the talent like leaving and creating studios like this feels like we hear this a lot because either they're tired of working on whatever projects you said, Bloodworth, maybe they were being told to keep working on this. We just talked a lot about that with Jason earlier about the team. It's like this has been the history for
The
decades.
fatigue. Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of these studios. I guess the thing is we see this a lot. My anxiety is that how often do they like succeed and like what does it actually take to succeed when you're striking out on your own? Because it feels like too often we hear like the developers from this and the developers from this big name game, and then like they either put something out and it's doesn't like quite catch on, or you just don't ever see them release anything. And so my hope is that I want people to succeed. So my hope is that they do unveil their project. It looks amazing and it succeeds and they takes off. But like that's always what I'm like struggling to like even trying to define is like what are the differences between the studios that strike out on their own? What do they do that makes them so successful for the ones that don't, even when they have veteran talent behind them?
Yeah.
Games are hard to make, man.
Yeah.
That's what this all
Like, is it just
saying
like
to me.
luck of the draw? Like you just happen to like.
I mean, like take like striking distance, for instance, right? Like they had their Dead Space spiritual successor all lined up, and then, who's knocking on the door? Oh, they're actually paying attention to Dead Space again in the time that it took for you to spin all of this up. And then, yeah, interestingly enough, that's Krafton as well. But, like, yeah, Krafton started pushing them to get things out sooner than they wanted. And, you know, who knows? Like, if they had more time, would it have done better? Or would it have still struggled against Dead Space remake looking as good as it did?
I like Callisto Protocol.
Like,
Shout out.
I like the company Day for Night's logo. Is that like what is that a badger?
Yeah, it's like a little badger on there.
Okay. Reminded me of what was the biomutant? Sorry, that's why I kept looking like. I was like, is this a biomutant? I was like, no, it's not biomutant. It's something else. So I was like, okay.
I don't like Biomutant.
Yeah. It's interesting too because it's like when you have like that mix of like, okay, well, Davide's done like Rabbids stuff in like a turn-based strategy game, and then Christian's done Red Dead, like big third-person open world thing, Shadow of Mordor, big third-person open world thing, but then Perfect Dark looks like it'll be a little bit more constrained, world hopping, level by level, immersive sim style.
Shades
so it's like,
of it, yeah.
Any direction it feels like this game could be going.
Mm-hmm. See you in 3-4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
No, 5, 6,
I was
7.
gonna-
5, 6, yeah.
Put it
I'm
further,
being
yeah.
optimistic here, yeah. At least.
Yeah. Also, just this morning, announced Damiani, AAA Avatar: The Last Airbender action RPG.
Get wrecked, Smite. Real deal now, Damiani. Let's go.
Coming from Paramount Studios and Saber Interactive, which is interesting.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
talking about the
like
connection that they had with World War Z
Yeah.
and how
Sick
it
game.
kind of led to this in a way.
Yeah.
Yes. I think of Avatar. I think of World War Z. Exactly. No, I'm kidding. I liked at least that they gave us a little bit of information that says it's set in a different time period, different characters, new setting, new characters in the past,
Yeah.
like 1,000 years in the past. So
Yep.
I do think the Avatar video game history has been kind of like mired by, not great efforts. Probably the highest, profile one being the Legend of Korra game from Platinum and Activision, and that just being kind of mid, honestly. I enjoyed it, but it definitely didn't like reach the highs that of other Platinum's games really, reached. And I don't know if there's any like inside information about that could ever come out, but like I always heard that like it was kind of a rush development with that game. So unfortunately, like big budgets and or appropriate amount of development time have never been like the story with these Avatar games. They've just kind of been like quick cash grabs that we kind of expected back in the day with like movie adaptations or TV adaptations. Doesn't really go the extra mile, though there were a few I think that on paper seemed pretty interesting but just didn't really pan out. So this comes along, AAA, big budget. I mean, it's saying things that should get you excited, yet deep in my soul I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want this. And like as someone who really loves the world of Avatar and like I like the show, I like most of what they've done with it. I've never really like had like a burning desire for it to be brought into like a video game format. I feel like some of like what it's trying to do and what it's trying to achieve doesn't really necessarily need to be done in video game format, but also I get that this is Avatar Studios. They're trying to make this a big brand. It's still popular, and they're realizing that people want more Avatar. So this is kind of inevitable. So I really do hope it is good, and I do think an RPG is probably the
please.
way
Open
to
world.
go with this.
Damiani, I was
So-
going to say my
yes.
favorite part of anime video games, Dragon Ball, Demon Slayer, Naruto, is like when you can just run around a town or run around this world that you love.
Well, that's part
But
of it.
that's the thing that I do worry about a little bit, not even being an Avatar fan, is the fact that, like, I looked at it again, it's thousands, multiple years in the past. So it's like, I wonder, Damiani, like, do you think the fact that like maybe you won't be in familiar locations, that you won't get to meet anybody from
It'll
the
still
show?
be the vibe, though. It'll still be the vibe in the world.
We know. I mean, yeah, there should still be like the kingdoms, the different like. So you're still gonna have like the air nomads, like the water tribes, the fire nation in some form, and the earth kingdom. I think those will, unless I'm misremembering things, those would still be around in some form. I mean, we've gone back all the way. We have the story, and Korra showed the first ever Avatar, Avatar 1, and how the Avatar even like happened. And so we know how the world looked up. We've seen like the spirit world. There's a lot of things they can do. I'm not so much worried about that. And I think like that might not be the most challenging part. I think where the real challenge lies is in the writing and the characters for this, because that is the high bar that both these shows, especially The Last Airbender, have set with their fan base. And for people who I think, praise that show and its critical acclaim it's received. And I think it's going to start and like end there. Yes, it's a game, but I think calling it an RPG, obviously the battle system is going to matter a lot, capturing the essence of if there's bending, the different benders and like the different actions they can use and how does it look. The art style is also going to be like very integral, but like the writing, like so much of this that draw people in are the characters and the writing, and it has such great dialogue, it has such great writing in the show. And I think some of the best adaptations you've seen out there, whether you're fans or not, have really captured that essence. And I'll point to, just because they are a good example of replicating what the show is well known of, or the South Park games, like those, the Fractured But Whole, and the Stick of Truth, especially the Stick of Truth, got so much praise because it was one of the people are saying this is a game that feels like the show, and it has like they cared about it. They tried to make it feel like it is authentic and fits in. And obviously, this is a way different direction. But like for me, I really care about the characters and the writing being really top notch in this. And if it's like if I'm not getting hooked on these characters, I don't care if it's the best battle system, the most beautiful world. I'm just like, because you're calling it Avatar, I'm gonna be so out if you don't get that right.
Any thoughts, Jason? Any Avatar love on your end?
No, I could not care less about Avatar. But Saber Interactive is an interesting company, very big company. It's not really clear who at Saber is making this one, right? But we know Saber has a lot of irons in the fire, newly independent from Embracer. Will be interesting to see what happens here. If they do want it to feel authentic to the show, they have to get some of the people who actually run the show involved, because that's what happened with South Park, right? Those games were not only voiced but also written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So hopefully they can do that series justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also this week, Death Stranding 2 got a 90-minute live stage presentation at TGS.
You said this. You said I misread something or something. I read something that they said. I read a headline that said Kojima said that Death Stranding 2 was only 30 to 40% done. But then you said it was taken out of context, bud?
There's somebody else on Twitter claiming that it was mistranslated.
Got it.
And that like in the sentence it's not actually clear what the 30 to 40% actually referred to.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, because then in the next little bit, it was like, oh, it's still on target for next year.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, that's...
Yeah, he had actually said that that they know the release date now, but for unstated reasons, couldn't tell it to people during TGS.
Got it. Some business thing.
But they will reveal next year.
Nice. Already the best photo mode of all time in a video game. Wow,
I have a theory about why he couldn't tell people the release date in TGS.
Yeah.
Call this educated speculation. I
love
think
that.
most game publishers are not going to announce their release dates for next year until as close to those dates as possible, because Rockstar has a nuclear bomb prepared to launch and nobody wants to be near it. So
tell me everything you know about GTA 6. Go.
So if Death Stranding, if Kojima is like, all right, we're targeting September for this game, there's no way in hell they're going to announce that until they know if Rockstar is actually going to hit fall of next year. And then if Rockstar announces September, they're staying clear from September. Like, that is, I guarantee you that every single game publisher has, like, contingency
Move
plans
out of the
for
way.
GTA 6. Yeah, for real. I mean, people even did that with Red Dead 2. Like, Call of Duty was moved up a month to stay away from Red Dead 2. And GTA 6 is, like, exponentially bigger than Red Dead 2
Way, oh my God, it's going to make $2 billion in a freaking weekend, dude. This is going to be nuts.
Yeah, so like Sony, I mean, that's the same reason that like Ghost of Tsushima 2 was what's it called? Tokei, Ghost of whatever. Yote. Didn't have like a release date or window or anything. A lot of these companies, I think in the next few months, like starting at the TGAs, I think you'll start seeing a lot of just 2025. And then the date will actually crystallize when people know when Rockstar is dropping their bomb.
So wild.
But yeah, that I looked at it again today. That still hasn't gotten an official translation.
Okay.
So I'm like really looking forward to like
Yeah.
watching that
Yeah.
whole talk in
I know.
context, because there are a couple of cutscenes in there.
Yeah. The photo and mode insanity.
There's the photo booth segment, but so they have a normal photo mode in addition to that. That's something about that photo shoot thing,
Everyone,
though.
like, dancing.
Yeah, they were
Sounds
talking
crazy.
like something that you do with that actually affects some story thing afterwards. Again,
Sounds like
I don't
Kojima.
have the full picture yet, right?
Awesome.
And then there was a dance performance in there with the Doll Man and Daiichi Miura, and that was pretty wild too. So yeah,
Excited.
We'll see.
I was so wrong about that game. It just always feels like Death Stranding 1 was just like announced and it came out. It just feels like it was so fast. So with 2, I kept thinking like, oh, it's gonna be out so soon.
I don't
so
think
soon.
Death Stranding was announced and came out that fast, but
It
I
just
think
feels like that. I don't know.
once they got to a point of saying a release date,
Yeah.
and then like how early they got it to us as reviewers, it was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
And
so
just like
funny you guys are
Kojima
saying that because I remember like 4,000 Death Stranding trailers and it showing up at every event before it was
Wild.
actually came out. Like
Yeah.
I remember it taking forever to come out.
Oh, maybe just because I was coming off of like MGS5 and the vibe of him starting his own studio.
Right.
So my brain was like, oh, we're not going to see a new game from him in like a decade. And then I was like, oh, here it is already. All right.
yeah. Speaking of fast developers, though, Strange Scaffold, makers of El Paso, Elsewhere, Click Holding, and I Am Your Beast, which all came out in the past year,
You're their biggest fan, Blood.
just announced another new game titled Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3.
There's no 1 or 2.
Right?
Wait, there isn't?
There is not. And they describe it as a match 3 survival horror RPG.
Awesome.
This is in addition to the kaiju co-op horror cooking game that's in the works
It's so wild.
with like monks and stuff. Like, yeah.
And like all these wild games they're making are good so far. Like,
That's
good
the thing.
stuff.
That's the
Yeah.
craziest part. Yeah. Sea of Stars got a big update this week, introducing 3-player co-op,
This is super cool.
difficulty settings, and the craziest part to me, they completely changed the introduction.
Whoa.
They scrapped the old intro that I
That's
complained
crazy.
about, replaced it with a new opening.
You
so
didn't
it-
like the original opening?
Blood takes credit
thought
for
it was-
this.
I don't take credit for it, but I'm not the only one.
Did
yeah,
they fix
it
all
was-
the comma splices? Those drove me crazy. The grammar in that
I would-
game drove me crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't either. But yeah, basically, that was the thing whenever I would have to tell people about this game is like, okay, look, the first hour or two, they're kind of slow, but once you get into it, like, it's got a good pacing afterwards. And so, and one of the things that contributed to that was you started with your characters in modern day, and then you went to a flashback, saw like their whole childhoods or whatever, and then caught up to where you were at the beginning. Now they're getting rid of that whole flashback thing completely. So basically, you're actually starting with them when they're kids and going through that storyline still, but it's not presented as a flashback.
Good.
And
Smart.
then they said that there's combat in the earlier stuff too. So it'd be interesting to check it out just to see like how different it feels and if it's actually faster or what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like just in movies and stuff, flashbacks can be annoying sometimes, when you're just like, if it's not done well and you're just kind of waiting to be caught up to the present, it's like you're over explaining things by like trying to have this cool flashy flashback. So, yeah.
And there's definitely some value in seeing like, again, the bonds between them and their buddy and all of that. But Garl.
Sick. Still want to play this game so bad.
But it's still, it's a weird thing for me to think about at the same time because it's like you're actually changing the opening of your game.
It's wild.
Like people will not be able to, unless they put an option.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally like people won't be able to play the way it was when I played it.
Speaking of Death Stranding, director's cut, similar thing, not completely changing the opening, I don't think, but like enhancing scenes, adding things, and yeah.
I actually just added like 40 new pages to Play Nice Blood, so check out your copy and you'll find a patch in there.
Play Magazine, unfortunately, is being shut down. It's going to see its final issue hit the shelves on October 15th. Play had only been going for 4 years under that name, but it was essentially a continuation of the UK's official PlayStation magazine, which goes back 29 years.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Legendary mag.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Play was
PSM
essentially...
and official PlayStation magazine, both.
Yeah, it was essentially the same editorial team. So, hearts go out to them, as well as Dexerto. Dexerto. I never had to say that word
Same.
out loud, so I'm like, how do you say it?
Same.
They laid off several writers this week. But Jason, I couldn't figure out the full scope of that. Like, I just saw like random people tweeting that they had been laid off. I didn't see anyone really reporting on like how widespread it was.
I don't know anything about that website except for their awful Twitter account that is just like like baiting everybody constantly.
Oh yeah.
Just,
bait the account for sure.
But I don't know anything about that website or anything, but sucks to people who got laid off, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I know they have a big esports segment, but then they have more general games writers as well. Don, I don't know if you got this photo. If not, no worries. But Pikmin have arrived at the San Diego Zoo.
Whoa.
Similar to wildlife or similar to Animal Crossing integration they did at the aquarium in Seattle earlier this year or last year, whenever that was. There are now little Pikmin statues all around the Wildlife Explorers Base Camp at the zoo, which will be there till the end of November. And it sounds like Nintendo also has like a little pop-up tent there to like check in and like get little activities to check off or whatever. And if you
Awesome.
bring a photo of the Pikmin that you found, there's like little goodie bags that they have for rewards.
Cool.
Good or bad that they deployed this after TwitchCon, where everyone was all these people were in San Diego that could have like been covering this.
Good, because this is specifically a kids thing.
That's what
Yeah, like this is a kids area where they get to go in and learn about animals and explore and stuff like that. So if you want to go and see the Pikmin, maybe find a friend who's got some kids to tag along. If you don't have any of your own, you might look a little weird, like going into a children's museum or something.
Checking out those Pikmin. I'm here for the Pikmin, kids.
The bad F-Zero games have arrived. F-Zero GP Legend and F-Zero Climax are now on Switch Online. Climax has never before been released in the US, but you can read my review from 2004
Hell yeah.
over at Nintendo World Report.
Yes.
They're actually not that bad. They're just bad for F-Zero games, essentially.
7 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, it was not happy with some of the like tracks and the campaign of that game. But F-Zero 99
Here we go.
keeps getting updates. It finally, there were rumors from the very start.
Have you still been hopping in?
No, not recently.
Will you hop in now?
I might hop in for this.
We got him.
Because we were conjecturing about this when it came out, and they did it. They actually did it. They added the tracks from the Satellaview game.
You're so stoked.
It's like
You're so
stuff that we've
stoked.
never seen because it's like this weird
Yes.
Japanese download over a satellite
Hey.
program.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, the F-Zero track editor will appear on the Nintendo Switch Online service. There you go.
Oh yeah, for F-Zero X.
Yeah.
64 DD content.
So this is
Let's
out
get
now,
it.
Blood.
Yeah. The F-Zero 99 stuff is definitely out. I don't
Nice.
know for sure whether GP Legend and Climax are out now or later because sometimes they do that with Switch Online
This
releases.
is October 11th or something, maybe. Let me look it up.
Okay. Yeah, they usually announce it and it's like
October
a week
11th,
later, but
yeah.
then other times they'll put them out right now, so it's hard to
Sure.
keep up with.
Cool. I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
Roll this, Don. This felt like it came out of nowhere. I didn't hear about this, but it came out like yesterday. Beyond Shadowgate
Back to the shadow.
launched on PC. It's Tuesday, October 1st, from the same creator as the NES original.
Dude.
It's 5 times larger. It has side quests based on Deja Vu and The Uninvited,
What?
the other adventure games that they had made on NES. And unlike the Shadowgate remake from a couple years back, this is like entirely done in like NES style pixel graphics.
The visuals are awesome.
Yeah.
Have you
love
guys
the art.
played Night Manor, which is a game inside of UFO 50? Because it's very Shadowgate
Not
inspired, and it's really cool.
Where's Isla?
I haven't. I had to leave, unfortunately.
Yeah,
she
she
had
would
some things to
know.
address, but
Dang.
yeah, she was showing us all the UFO 50 stuff. But
Yeah.
obviously, there's 50 games, so I don't know if we didn't see Night Manor. I don't think. I think she's like highlighting
cool.
and was like, "This is why this is cool." But yeah,
Nice. Yeah, this looks sick.
yeah.
Very
It's
cool.
wild to think of just like 5 times bigger in this kind of a
Yeah.
adventure game.
Yeah.
And then Don, roll this next one too. Yeah, Don and Isla and I were actually poking at this. This week, NBB.exe finally released.
Okay.
And you might not know what that is.
Nope.
But you will recognize the name. This is from Bernardo Del Castillo.
Oh,
Delcast.
Delcast.
Yeah, one of our longtime supporters.
Hell yeah.
From back in the GT days. He's been working on this game for several years now.
Final trailer. That's exciting.
And it's out now. It is a top-down kind of puzzling platformer game. He says it's kind of like a mix of it's like a Bomberman game that with like some Metroidvania elements as well.
It looks hardcore as hell, dude.
It's definitely tricky figuring out like
Oh, laser puzzles.
just the distance and stuff in the platforming. with
Telecast,
the
what are you doing to
angle.
me, dude?
But yeah, laser puzzles for sure.
Couch co-op, we'll get Isla to
tricky
carry.
puzzles and laser.
Yeah. We'll get Isla to carry. It's fine.
Yeah, there's the local multiplayer for 4 players. There's co-op and competitive modes as well, which we haven't poked at yet. And then a main campaign. So,
Cool.
congrats on the
Yeah,
launch.
well done.
Good stuff.
Wow. Freaking released a video game. It's so cool.
Yeah. All right, it is now time for love and respect. Whoop. There he is. Love and respect. From Rahul Masal. Hi, allies. I had a thought regarding the decision to not continue Jin's story directly in Ghost of Yotei. Simply put, the map. I am excited for Ghost of Yotei to have a completely brand new world to explore, as opposed to an expanded one. Although Jin certainly could explore a new island in addition to Tsushima, or Iki in a theoretical direct sequel. I need to get like water because my mouth is not
I
working.
will, as you take a sip of water, I'll just praise how good Iki Island is. One of the best DLCs I've ever played in my life.
So basically they're saying that most likely the island of Tsushima would still have been the main focus and just reused and expanded upon. And in my opinion, this would have been a boring decision. I think that reusing an entire map area has proven to be somewhat fatiguing in games like Tears of the Kingdom or even Spider-Man 2. What do you all think? Should open world sequels expand upon their previous world maps or move on entirely And what are some good examples?
Good examples of it staying the same are Yakuza.
I was about to throw that in there as well. I know they're asking for what we prefer, but it was very insightful to get that information from the Yakuza developers about reusing assets and thinking open world games that don't do that are crazy because you put all that work into there. That's how those come out so quickly. And also looking at like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, how it was a lot of reused assets, but also they were creating a lot of original for like the Sky and Underground. And so in terms of like viability and, making people's jobs, not miserable and, making these games come out in not 10 years, maybe that is something we need to be more accepting of is, setting them and expanding upon existing worlds. But personally, I always want like a brand new, like open world environment, but it might not. Yeah. Like I don't want to be like that greedy anymore, knowing the reality from like game development side of it, that's like a huge ask.
I think Sony's doing it really well, though. I prefer this way where it's like Horizon Burning Shores or Iki Island. You have your big giant game and then your giant / standalone expansion, whatever it may be. And then, down the line a sequel. So if like a giant open world game has a big expansion, and I return and I get my fill of it, then for the next one around, I would want a new one, but I totally get if they, reuse their assets.
I think you can reuse assets without necessarily reusing the same topography in the same world. It's interesting. It's funny that there's any sort of criticism about Yoke starring a different character, Yote. God, I keep misremembering the name for some reason. It's funny that there's any sort of criticism of that because so many of Sony's recent first-party games have felt so samey. Spider-Man 2 felt a lot like the first game. God of War Ragnarok felt a lot like the first game. Horizon Forbidden West felt a lot like the first game. And that's all in large part because you play as the same character with a lot of the same abilities. Yeah, I think it's awesome that Sony is putting out the sequel that is 300 years in the future and will have totally different weapons and abilities and totally different main character. So I'm surprised that there's criticism of that. And then I realize, it's a woman. Of course there's criticism. So no surprise. Shock is all gone. Because there's always an undercurrent of sexism to people being like, I actually love Jin Sakai. Like, how many people are out there being like, Jin is my favorite PlayStation character. He's really the icon.
Man. I love him. He's an icon. I love him.
He's fine. He's
just amazing.
He's fine, Uber. Settle down. He's okay. He's fine.
Did you have Japanese VO or not?
Yeah, no, he's
because that added to it. I don't know.
It's just
so
like
good.
There weren't a ton of people hankering for more Jin Sakai as opposed to like it's fine that we're getting a new character. It's not like Kratos or Spider-Man where it's like this icon of the PlayStation brand. And I think there's a lot of sexism attached to the whole like, how dare they abandon Jin for this new character. I think that's an undercurrent to a lot of the criticism we've seen.
Yeah, and I love when a character goes away and their story is unfinished. Like, there's no death date for Jin Sakai, whereas in Assassin's Creed, it's like, when Ezio dies. But now this opens up so many possibilities when you're playing Yotai to hear the myth of Jin and kind of piece together where he's been, and that's really exciting. Maybe there'll be a flashback where he has a cameo or, other little smaller games in between. So I know we have definitely not seen the last of him, and that angle is actually really exciting too. So yeah.
Yeah, he had a very clear narrative arc that just is over. Like, why do you need more of that?
Totally. It could be done for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's also like very challenging when you're dealing with a New York City or the island of Tsushima, or it's like you can only do so much with that open world. And one of the biggest parts about Ghost of Tsushima was the fact that like they put so much time and care into recreating that place and that setting that like, the people there like were like so grateful for what they did, and so I can see that like, okay, rather than like figuring out like, well, how do we remix this and how do we not make it feel the same? It's like, let's just do that again somewhere else. A different part of Japan, and tell that story.
Huber, I think the main character's name's Atsu? Yes, Atsu. Sorry. I had to look it up. They're shamisen. They'll probably bust it out and do a song about Jin at some point.
Dude,
just for you,
yes,
Huber.
Please.
Just for you,
dude.
Huber.
And the freaking wolf companion and the dual wield, so hype.
Yeah, I do like the approach that Ghost of Yotei is taking, because I do like the idea of having like a single game, even if it's a big open world game, being self-contained and being able to move on to just like a completely different setting and different characters, because one, I think it's more it presents like, creative challenge for the people working on the game, so that you don't run into that problem. You're always working on the same thing. You have a little bit more creative freedom. You don't have to worry about connective tissue too much about like these threads, where'd they go, or we didn't add any unresolved storylines. Like, doesn't matter. We're going ahead 300 years in the future, like from their point of view, and it's a different setting. And a different setting means like you can take existing assets, but like make it feel like you're in a whole different part of that region of the world, or in other games, other parts. You mentioned New York Blood, like with Spider-Man. Like, I was still impressed in Spider-Man 2 when they added more boroughs to New York, and like that's something like they can keep shooting for, even a game that's based in more like more modern, realistic setting like that. We're adding just like more, more of the area to there, so it's like, oh, it feels bigger. And then making it feel lived in. Like, maybe one day we'll be able to like go inside those buildings. Who knows? Like, more of them. And like, and what's really the point though? Like, you really want to go into every building in New York like that? Don't think that's gonna be that much fun, honestly. But like,
Matrix Online, dude.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you're going to you're Spider-Man. What do you do? Walking in the building? Like, yeah, you want to swing around outside. That's where the fun is. But yeah, like even those games can still be that impressive by like just adding more of those landmarks, adding more of that geography. And I kind of like prefer that, and like kind of have been gravitating more towards wishing games would do that type of thing. So yeah, I'm super excited for like the premise of Ghost of Yotei and having like that different type of setting. Also, I'll be transparent. I did not completely finish Ghost of Tsushima. I only got 2/3 of the way through, so I didn't see the end of Jin's storyline. But like, I still felt pretty satisfied with what I got in there, and I think they're doing, like, Sucker Punch doing a really good job there for sure.
Shout out to Spider-Man 2 for accurately recreating New York by leaving out Staten Island, just like the rest of the stuff.
That's a good one.
Gabby cackled in
I
the
was
room.
going to say.
Skate Jimmy 5 asks, hello allies, with the recent news that EA is sunsetting The Simpsons Tapped Out
Yeah, dude, I played that game.
on
Rest in
mobile
peace.
apps
I liked it.
after 12 years
That's wild.
online, my resentment towards the company has returned.
Here we go.
I've been playing this game routinely every day when I wake up, on my lunch break, at work, and before going to bed. This has been my mobile game.
Wow.
There's been none other, basically. This happened to one of my other beloved games years ago, EA's Skate 3.
Oh my god.
Wow.
When they shut down the servers.
It's time to stop committing to EA games, man.
Yeah.
It's EA. You should know.
Good grief.
But after massive outcry from fans, they at least kept the ability to save your recorded videos to a website that you could download from later, which was nice. Even longer ago, my best friend and I got our weekend gaming taken from us. Battlefield 2.
Wow.
Don't get me started on this. This is
It's
one of the
bit
most
of a trend
painful
here,
ones.
buddy. It's like
Yeah. I
at
feel
a certain
your
point,
pain.
it's on you.
I feel the pain. Battlefield 2. I know people have told me there's like private servers out there you can like pay money.
Yeah,
to,
I mean,
but-
it took a long time for them
yeah.
to figure
but like,
any of that out.
oh, Battlefield 2.
This was our game every single weekend. Again, an EA game, I know. Anyway, my question is, have any of your favorite games ever gone offline for good? How did it make you feel? And did you find some way to cope with that hollow feeling?
My question
Concord.
is, when are you going to stop playing EA games? Because they're just going to hurt you. Like, you can't quit them.
Stay
and
with the
they're
single
just-
player.
Yeah, man.
Like Dead Space or something.
I was bummed when Destiny removed Peter Dinklage. That was
Oh, right.
very sad.
That was crazy they did that.
Incredibly wild.
For real, I'm not being ironic. Like, I think about Concord still. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. Every once in a while, I'll be sitting there. I'm like, shit, man, I could go for like a Concord match right now. That sounds so fun.
How much of it did you play when it was still online?
25, 30 hours, 20 to 30 hours maybe, somewhere in there.
And you were really into it.
Yeah, Gabby and I both. We played it. We loved it.
You got us hooked on looking through the whole map,
The whole-
reading all the lore bits.
Yeah, the galactic hub, all the lore. Like, the lore was sick. The gameplay was sick. It was just a straight up fun game that, like, all of a sudden got catapulted into like this the highest stakes of like the most bad faith internet possible, you know? So it's like, it really is just, I know it's first party, so there's, and the money, budget, whatever, but like, it really is just like a fun hero shooter. Like, it doesn't need to be anything more or less, and it just became this like huge controversial thing, and it's like, dude, it's just a fun game. Like, it's just a fun game I wish I could play.
I was really devastated when they closed down Babylon's Fall last year.
All right, Dummy Honey. Sure.
I was that one player. No, I'm just kidding.
You're not.
And no, I'm just kidding. I don't really know of any like live service game that has been like shut down that I enjoyed. The only ones I've ever played that I had any enjoyment with were Final Fantasy 11 for a little bit. That's still going on, and Final Fantasy 14, which probably will never end until humanity is destroyed as well. But I will say, to sort of answer the question, but not really, but to repurpose it in a way I can answer it, things that have gone online that I wish I could still play, even though I know they weren't very good, because I like historical preservation and like being able to go back and compare things very easily. The 1.0 servers for Final Fantasy 14, just to have that experience to play it. I know that they've gone on record said they're not proud of that work, and they don't know why anyone want to play something that was in a worse state. But I think, that's part of the, the misunderstanding there is that some people just want to understand what it was like to have that frame of reference, because sometimes it takes experiencing how bad it was to know how good or how much better things have gotten, unless you're just going to like watch YouTube videos and take what everyone else tells you at face value. Obviously, I think your own experience will better inform you in the context of something like this. So yeah, I did get to play a little bit of Final Fantasy 1.0, but it's like I didn't play any of the patch updates after that. So it's like I would love to go, and it's been what 13 years. So it's like I would like to just go back and just see it and like experience it again, just to remember it. And I'm sure there's other games that people would similarly love to go back and like try that. I mean, that they in one regard, Blizzard got that right by understanding their fan base. Like they knew why people wanted to go back and try it, even if it was quote unquote worse than where the game is now. It's like, yeah. So that's my one wish, is like they could have like Final Fantasy 1.0 available to still play in some form.
Yeah, a lot of MMOs in my life. I went through a phase for like 10 plus years where I tried to play legit every MMO. So yeah, no, for real.
I know you said this, but every time you say it, I'm just like
so many. And I still got all my boxes at home to prove it.
Gosh.
There's so many MMOs, like from top to bottom MMOs. But the one that stings the most, that was the most legendary at the time, was Star Wars Galaxies. I mean, that game was so special at the time. It was just epic. Like, you couldn't, when the game first came out, it was like, you can't be a Jedi. You have to unlock it somehow, and they didn't tell you how. It was a mystery. So, but you could be other things, like just entertainers, like, musicians and bounty hunters, going on Tatooine. And like, I remember my whole big thing was just trying to get into Jabba's throne room, and you had to like work your way in there by doing these like really hard quests, really cryptic. Like, you had to get other people with you, and I was a kid too, wasn't in a guild, so it was just like so hard to get people to group up for these things. But like, you would get like further into Jabba's palace. It was just so fun.
Are you sure you're not talking about Star Wars Outlaws?
I know, there's parallels, right?
Yeah.
And then I regret that I wasn't there when the game shut down, because I was watching it from a distance. just how everyone gathered for that. You know, whenever an MMO goes offline or any game goes offline, just everybody gathered there is like a bittersweet time capsule.
What do you got, Jason?
Maybe like some text-based MUDs that I used to play don't exist anymore. Other than that, I got nothing. Destiny 1 was my go-to service game for a while, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, I can't think of any others. Maybe some of the old 3DS games like don't really work anymore, don't have the
Right.
same Street Pass functionality anymore. That's a little sad, but it's not like I'm going and playing them often or something.
Yeah, I just thought of more, like a lot of these remasters that come out that ditch the multiplayer modes. So like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood Deathmatch was so fun. You could just like hide in hay barrels and assassinate people. And it was so cool because to get people to like play along, if you ran or did something weird, it would like clearly show you. So you had to blend in, you had to walk. It was like so deliberately paced. That was cool.
Yeah. The one for me is, I mean, Concord obviously was fun, and it's crazy that it's gone already. But Onrush, that was
Onrush.
such a cool, great creative game where it's
Yeah.
like the developers just went out on this limb and made this crazy thing, and people did not know what it was.
Ugh.
They did not understand it. They got in there, it was like, I thought this was supposed to be a racing game, and like, why am I like
Ahead
trying
of
to
its
smash
time.
other people? And this, like, it was just like one of those things where like you had to like take away all your preconceived notions, take the game for what it was, and just go with it. And people were just like, no, man, I just want another dirt game, or I want another grid or something. It's just like,
I
it
didn't
was
ask
so
for this.
good. It felt so good to like fly up in the air and then just like slam down on a dude, and it's like hit the slow mo and everything. And
Sick.
yeah, I had so much fun
Slow mo, dude. Shout out to
working on
Dre.
that review. Oh man,
That's sick, blood. Bring it back.
from Jason Wojnar.
Yo, yo.
Hi, Jason.
Hello.
First of all, love the first name. My question is specifically for you, but I guess everyone might have some advice in some way or another. As a journalist, what is the best way to approach leads or people you want to write a feature on if you don't have the backing of a publication behind you or you don't have a pitch approved yet from a site? What can you do to not just seem like a random freak reaching out from nowhere who is just trying to waste someone's time?
That's interesting. That's a great question. What I would probably do is I would say, hey, I would like to interview you for a story about blah, 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 blah. I don't have a publication attached, but would you commit to an interview if I do? And so I wouldn't go ahead with the interview and like try to do, like take an hour of their time or something, or multiple hours of their time and then write a story without actually having the backing first. I would get a commitment, and then you can go and pitch outlets and be like, hey, I have a commitment from this person to participate in this if you approve it, and work from there. And then you can also get an idea of if there's even interest for the story that you're trying to pitch before you waste everybody's time on a story that won't actually go anywhere. So that's how I would do it.
Interesting.
Sick.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the fascinating things, Jason, because this is like we all work in like many different dimensions of this industry, right? And so it's like some of the stuff that you do every day is like I rarely ever have to even think about, right? And it's just, and like I've been at this like almost 30 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm lucky. I mean, I don't have to freelance, or like I have a publication where I work full time. So I don't have to think about that particular question either too much, fortunately.
Yeah. But as you were saying, like there's a lot of places that are, doing more and more freelancers, and that's how they do most of their content.
I remember using my student ID for like even after I graduated for like 5 years just to like get into
to
places and
ask questions and
yeah,
things.
yeah.
All right. Okay, it's time for bets. This week's bet: Phoenix Springs is out next week on October 7th. It is a very cool, beautifully illustrated adventure/investigation game. I want to know how many words there will be in the very first document that I encounter at the start of the game. So a document can be a letter or a piece of mail or
In-game
some note.
document.
Yeah.
Not a tutorial pop-up.
Right, or an email or something like that. But it's it's a document.
Got it.
So first of all, Jason, we need to settle out who your point will go to if you win next week.
Who wants it? That's the question. Who's gonna? Who's gonna?
someone's-
Okay, so whoever pre-orders the most copies of my book will get my points.
Pre-ordering Huber.
Like,
You guys gonna fight
Don's
it out?
usually the one who takes the baits like this. I'm surprised
Yeah.
Don's not going
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was busy filling out my credit card information on the
Beautiful. Okay, Don gets it.
shit.
Don
Man.
gets
it
it.
is.
There we
I ordered
go.
a crate.
Going to Don.
There it is.
Okay, how many words in that document, Jason? 50.
50. Stay above 50.
Damiani.
32.
32. Huber, Stealthy Centipede.
11.
11. Don, do we have Isla's bet?
I look around here. I don't see any loose card. Darn it, I don't see anything.
Okay, we'll find it. We'll look for it.
This game looks cool.
I'll text her and ask.
Yeah, we played it at Summer Game Fest.
Oh, nice. Oh, yes, I remember it from Summer Games Fest. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
Don, what is your bet?
My bet is
57.
yes.
Some big documents here. Gabby, Optimistic Rat, what do you got? I can't hear her. 15?
Yes,
1-5?
15.
Nice.
I texted Isla, so we'll see if momentarily she will answer the bet.
Okay. And then I went with 17. So the low end is pretty tight. We will see. Last week's bet. Starfield Shattered Space.
Hearing mixed things here.
I've seen this game looks like broken for some people. It's
Jeez.
just utter mess.
I was not expecting that. I was like, all right, here's their coming out party. Let's
Can
go.
I
Like,
can I
this
say
is gonna be the
something?
one.
Can I say something
Yeah.
about Bethesda real quick? Relevant to our conversation earlier, Bethesda, when it made Fallout 3 and Skyrim, was around 100 people, maybe a little less. Now
Yeah.
on Starfield was somewhere upwards of 500, maybe closer to 400, maybe between 400 and 500 people.
It's too many.
Wow.
It's too many people. You look at Ubisoft, and I feel like it's a similar thing. But then you look at GTA, and it's like, well, they have 1 million people working on a game, and their games are good.
But like you're saying, essentially 500 on like this game, right?
Oh yeah, and well now they're also back in the day it was one studio in Rockville, and now there are 4 studios in Rockville, in Austin, in Dallas, and Montreal.
Yeah. Crazy. But anyway, so yeah, that came out Monday. On Monday at 6 p.m., I checked to see how many people would be watching Starfield on Twitch. Last week, Damiani bet 1,001. Huber bet 18,000 people would be watching.
I thought it was gonna be their moment, dude. It's back.
Isla bet 1996. Don bet 10,200. Gabby bet 1,000 even. And I bet 4.1 thousand. The answer was an even 7,000. So I got that one. We also have a catch-up bet. A little over a month ago, we put bets on the launch trailer for Parcel Core.
Oh,
Yeah. But they delayed.
They delayed at the last minute. It's now out today.
It's out today.
Yep.
Premium Rush tonight.
The game has had an ongoing marketing campaign featuring a live-action cyclist in pretty much every one of their trailers. So for the launch trailer, I had asked whether there would be more gameplay or more live-action footage and how long that segment would be. So roll this launch trailer, Don. Damiani had said there would be live-action 52 seconds. Huber said gameplay 52 seconds. Dawn said gameplay 60 seconds. Gabby said gameplay 48 seconds. Blood, that's me. I said live action 46 seconds. Today's launch trailer had no live action footage. They just got rid of the gimmick altogether. And the gameplay, 50 seconds. Directly between
Hi, Gabby, yes.
Huber and Gabby.
Yes. I needed a point so bad. It's been so long. My God.
So that brings our scores to 10 for the
that.
stealthy centipede, 9 for the effervescent hippopotamus, bloop, 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 and 7 for the optimistic rat. All right, let me tell you about patreon.com/easyallies.
Oh, wait, 1 second. Isla just got her bet in. It's 14.
14.
Thank you, Isla.
14 words. We're all jammed up
So
there.
wait, that was the parcel core bet.
The parcel of Corbett, you and Gabby won.
Yeah.
I won the
That's right.
Starfield bet.
Starfield, sorry, got
Yep.
it. Yeah, okay. Got it.
All right. Patreon.com/easyallies is where you can go to support us. We are funded primarily by people just like you who are watching this podcast and listening to this podcast each and every week. Thank you so much to everyone that makes this happen. We cannot do it without you for sure. Dropping $5 a month in there covers not only your own enjoyment of all of this, but for the people that cannot do that for whatever reason. I get those things all the time. It's like I had to buy a house, so I had to, move. I had to, I just had a kid, or whatever, So like they can't stay in it. So thank you for everyone who is covering for not just yourself, but for everybody watching. At $5, you get this podcast 2 days early. You get ad free. You get 2 bonus Love and Respect questions. You can submit to Love and Respect, get those questions in there, and you get into our official Discord, where you can vote on the top 10s and all that other good stuff. Then we've got all these other tiers. At the top of that are our platinum producers, and they get a shout out on this podcast each and every week. This month's shout outs go to Jabawabs and El Thanis. Shout out.
Wow.
All right, Jason, plug that book one more time and let us know where people should follow you.
Oh man, I stayed awake. It's way past my bedtime here, but I somehow managed to stay awake. Yeah, my book is Play Nice: The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. It comes out October 8th. I'm very excited for people to read it, so go check that out. And yeah, if you enjoyed hearing me talk, you can hear me talk more at the Triple Click podcast, which is a video game show every week. Listen to it and buy my book.
Excellent. To celebrate October in our Discord, the patrons are putting together a spooky/spoopy watch list. So get in there, drop in your suggestions and discussions for shows, episodes of TV shows, and movies. I should have done it last week.
Maybe I'll stop by.
I should have done it last week, but next week's podcast will be our fall game preview. So we'll get a look at all that stuff coming out the rest of this month, as well as November and December.
I'll be streaming Dead Space here, Dead Rising.
Dead Rising.
Real soon.
And then finally, I have to be a little dodgy about this because of the live audience. But just a few hours after this podcast is done shooting, there will be a video that goes up on youtube.com/easyallies. Huber is in that video and Isla is in that video.
Oh, yeah.
And it is of a certain October game that you probably want to know more about. So go take a look at that.
Definitely check a look.
All right. Me, Huber, and Gabby won those bets. So there's one for each of us.
Okay.
There's the shout out.
I'm giving the shout out to Jason Schreier for joining us on this podcast and writing a must-read book. I got to read this book. I need all of the inside Blizzard knowledge, Jason.
Enjoy
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yes.
Huber. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, dude. Thanks for like writing that? Like, we didn't even ask. How long did it take you from like idea to it's in the store?
It was like 3-ish years.
3 issues. That's
Wow.
a long time.
Yeah.
That's a big commitment. So that's awesome, dude.
It was fun,
Well
though.
done. Congrats.
Thank you.
Gabby, do you want a final word or sign off?
I want the sign off.
You want the sign off, so I got to come up with the final word. What are we talking about? I guess I'll just echo that. Thank you, Jason, for being here, for getting in touch.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Super fun.
It was definitely a super fun time, and I mean, honestly, I still haven't read the other books, so I need to go back and catch up. As I told you, I'm not doing a good track record on my reading. I did not have confidence that I would get through this in time, and I'm glad I did.
Heck yeah.
Thank
Shows
you,
how
thank
good
you,
it
thank
is.
you. Hope you enjoy the other ones too.
All right, Gabby, give us a sign off.
Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Get the dream egg from the Moogle Chocobo Carnival to unlock the Master Assassin's robes for Noctis.
Tell me everything you know about GTA 6. Go!